Chapter 3483. The little fellow called out, female benefactor, this little monk's head is oily, it's uncomfortable. Arbor was speechless. Mo Lien snickered and pulled that little monk down from Qiao Qiao's lap. He swayed the little monk in his hand as he asked with a spurious smile, benefactress's husband will help you wipe your head? The little monk immediately rejected her without giving her any face. I want female benefactor. As they spoke, the city gates suddenly opened and a troop of cavalry rushed out. The leader was a young general dressed in battle armor. His expression was solemn and stern. Hundreds of cavalry quickly arrived beside the group. The leading general hurriedly pulled on the reins and jumped off his horse. He strode forward and cupped his hands in greeting. This general, Zhong Li Ping, greets Crown Prince and Crown Princess. Prince Mo looked deeply at the young general in front of him and nodded. Where did little General Zhong Li go? In reply to your highness. Zhong Li Ping said very respectfully, this general is following His Majesty's orders to go to the 10-mile slope to receive a divine pill refiner. Upon hearing this, Qiao Mu sized him up. Zhong Li Ping? Great General Zhong Li's son? Previously, at grandfather's banquet, this great General Zhong Li was clearly forced by the Crown Prince to go to His Majesty and hand over his resignation letter. Why was his son still working for His Majesty in the imperial court? Zhong Li's residence had secretly accumulated many powerful divine realm cultivators deep in the mountains and forests. How could His Majesty tolerate such a person with ulterior motives? Impossible. Then what was the reason that Zhong Li Ping was still in the imperial court? Could it be that it had something to do with this divine pill refiner that he was about to receive? Mo Lien gazed deeply at Zhong Liping, inwardly admiring this Zhong Liping's current tranquil appearance. Logically speaking, Prince Mo had forced Zhong Li's family into such a state. When Zhong Liping saw him this time, he should have the look of someone who had met an enemy with eyes filled with hatred. However, this brat did not show any emotion. He was actually able to keep his composure. I wonder which divine-grade alchemist it is? Mo Lien asked. Zhong Liping cupped his hands again and said respectfully, reporting to your highness, this is this general's distant cousin, Shan Yisu, cousin Shan. Mo Lien frowned slightly. However, he didn't know that the extremely famous young divine-grade alchemist actually had such a relationship with the Zhong Li clan. Distant cousin? Mo Lien nodded. Go ahead. Yes, your highness. Zhong Liping's performance was pretty good. From the beginning to the end, he didn't show any disrespect to the crown princess. Hearing that His Highness was letting them go, he respectfully bowed to the couple. Then he waved his hand and led the 100-man team forward. This person, Zhong Liping, does have some of his father's awe-inspiring presence. Mo Lien commented dryly. It was just that the wives he married were all so stupid. They were all troublemakers who couldn't help. Arbor tilted his little head and took out a clean handkerchief. He carefully wiped the oil stains on little Baldy's head and asked, who is Shan Yisu? Mo Lien smiled. Shan Yisu is a rather famous divine-grade alchemist in the 3 continents. She is only 28 years old now. 3 years ago, she entered the divine-grade alchemist sect. Sir Jojo made an "oh" sound and didn't say anything else. Mo Lien lowered his head to look at his little emperor and pulled her into his embrace. Chapter 3484. His action was so sudden that he brought the little monk, who was in Lady Qiao Qiao's hands, into his bosom. Jojo is much more formidable than her. Crown Prince Lien felt that he needed to let his wife know that in his heart, no formidable pill refiner could compare to his little emperor. Arbor cast a glance at him and didn't bother to speak. Squeezed between the two of them, the little Baldy grumbled unhappily, benefactress's husband, can you two not squeeze this little monk? This little monk still has oil on his head. Aren't we wiping it for you? Arbor grumpily cupped his little round head and wiped it a few more times. Okay, it's out of oil. The little monk raised his hand to rub his head before nodding in satisfaction. Benefactress, this little monk needs to wash his hair properly tonight. Arbor, Mo Lien couldn't help but laugh out loud. What are you washing your hair for? With your bald head and photon brain, you just need to wipe it with a rag every day. Sir Jojo pursed his lips in amusement. He reached out to pick up the little monk, whose face was puffed up like a bun, and quickly walked to the side of the carriage before jumping onto it. The group successfully passed through Dragon Flame City's checkpoint. Arbor took her parents and family to a garden-style residence on Changle North Street. This residence was one of the 5 properties she had won from Mu Rochuan during her grandfather's birthday banquet. It was a space ring she had won from her. The space ring just happened to store some talisman puppets and elixir pills, which she handed to little Sixth Zheng and the huge bear squad. This residence was just right for her parents and family to live in. It was also close to her Kai-Dai pavilion and precious painting workshop. Changle Main Street was also a bustling area where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold. Even this medium-sized garden-style residence located here was also worth a lot. The Chiao family's arrival was sudden. Fortunately, they had hired someone to clean this residence for a long time, so the environment was relatively clean. This residence was still smaller than the Marquis of Jiyuan's estate that they used to live in, but it was enough for a family to live in. The courtyard was also exquisitely renovated. There were pavilions, terraces, pavilions, and playhouses. The environment looked very comfortable and elegant. The family moved into the new residence and naturally took some time to tidy up. Wei Ziqin saw that the sky was gradually darkening and urged her daughter to quickly return to the palace with the crown prince to rest. Anyway, it wouldn't be good to tidy it up in a day or two. They planned to stay here first and tidy it up slowly later. When he was free, he would go to the broker house and buy 2 servants, and everything would be on the right track. Not long after the young couple returned to the Eastern Palace, a young eunuch hurriedly came to deliver a message, saying that His Majesty urgently summoned the Crown Prince for an audience. Mo Lien reluctantly let go of his wife and went to report to his father's extreme time hall. Arbor, on the other hand, took a combat bath. He was so tired that he lay on the bed and rolled around. The past few days had been really thrilling. Fortunately, this half a month of sightseeing had soothed his anxious heart quite a bit. Arbor lay on the bed, thinking that he might be able to receive the 100,000 blank jade slips tomorrow. He also had to go to Fish Orchid Planet to draw talismans. Recently, his realm had stabilized quite a bit. It was time to advance to the next level. As he thought about it, he fell asleep in a daze. In the middle of the night, he suddenly woke up with a start. He reached out to touch the empty and cold bedding beside him. He rolled over and sat up, his little face immediately puffing up. Jojo's lotus was gone. Chapter 3485. Sir Jojo jumped down and put on a coat. Kai Xiao, who heard the noise at the door, carefully pushed open the door and walked in. Arbor was stunned and casually asked, "Why aren't you sleeping?" Kai Xiao heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly walked up and said in a low voice, "Crown Princess, why did you suddenly wake up?" "Lien is gone." Sir Jojo muttered unhappily. Kai Xiao couldn't help but pursed her lips and chuckled. Crown Prince was called to the study by His Majesty. "Crown Princess, have you forgotten? What time was it already? There were so many things to discuss." Arbor's pair of round almond eyes couldn't help but slightly narrowed. "You're saying that after His Majesty called Crown Prince over, he didn't let him come back?" Kai Xiao coughed lightly. His Highness sent someone to pass the message back. But he saw that Crown Princess was asleep yesterday, so he didn't disturb you. Crown Prince was entrusted by His Majesty to go to the 10-mile slope to help little General Zhong Li pick up a divine-grade pill master. Arbor couldn't help but be startled, following which a trace of anger surged in her eyes. Pick up someone in the middle of the night? Didn't that Zhong Li Ping already left the city in the evening to pick up that pill master called Shan Yisu? Could it be that he waited until the middle of the night and still hadn't come back? What was it? This person was brought to the Sea of Forgetfulness, right? Was there such a long journey? Seeing that the little Crown Princess was angry, Kai Xiao hurriedly said in a gentle voice, "Seems like something happened at the 10-mile slope. That pill master and little General Zhong Li were blocked by a group of bandits at the 10-mile slope and couldn't come out." "Bandits?" Arbor seemed to have heard a big joke and couldn't help but raise her voice slightly. "These bandits are really quite interesting. They came all the way from Qingyu border city and didn't even bump into a single bandit. They also passed through the 10-mile slope and didn't bump into anything. Once this pill master passed through, he was immediately surrounded by bandits. It turned out that bandits also treated people well. At this time, Kai Xiu had already helped Arbor put on his clothes and tidied them up properly. Seeing the little crown princess about to go out with her long hair, she hurriedly pulled her, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. This servant will help you tidy up your hair a little. Crown princess, are you going to the 10-mile slope now? From what I can see, it's almost dawn. I'm afraid that the crown prince and General Zhongli will be back soon. Why don't we wait a little longer? Jojo's expression was a little uncertain. Just as she pushed open the door, she saw Tong, who was guarding the door, turn around and bow to her. At this time, the sky was just beginning to brighten. The red sun in the east had not completely jumped out of the horizon. Only a small part of its head was exposed, reflecting a touch of sunset on the horizon. Sir Jojo's expression was unperturbed. He clasped his hands behind his back and asked crisply, "Where's Lotus? He's not back yet?" This guy is really looking down on the little emperor more and more. He actually dared to stay out all night without saying a word. Tong laughed embarrassedly and hurriedly said, "His Highness the Crown Prince has just sent a message back. He will definitely be back in the palace in an hour." Jojo puffed up his little face and heavily snorted. He turned around and pattered towards the direction of the main hall. Kai Xiu glanced at Tong and gave him a look that said, "Let His Highness fend for himself." She hurriedly followed the little crown princess' footsteps. Until Arbor finished a tasteless breakfast, she found that the guy who said he would be back in an hour was still nowhere to be seen. She was furious. Chapter 3486. She packed her small bag, carried a pile of things, and called for someone to send her back to the Qiao residence on Changel North Street. When Sir Jojo arrived, the whole family had just woken up and were having breakfast in the dining room. When they heard that Jojo was back, they hurriedly ran out to welcome her. They saw the little girl standing in the middle of the courtyard under the bright morning sun. Her little face was tense as she ordered the accompanying servants to move boxes of things inside. Wei Ziqin was delighted when she saw her. She went forward and hugged her daughter. "My good daughter, why are you here so early in the morning? Didn't I tell you to rest well?" "Mother, I'm moving back to stay for a few days." Sir Jojo's words made everyone look at each other in dismay. Miss Qiao asked the servants to carry the boxes to her courtyard. When they came back yesterday, they had already divided the courtyards. Her pear blossom courtyard was next to her parents' courtyard. It was slightly smaller, but it was the most exquisite courtyard in the entire residence. Wei Ziqin blinked and turned to look at her husband. They both faintly felt that the little girl seemed to be angry. That what happened? Why didn't they see little Mo? Qiao Zhongbang winked at his wife, meaning that she should hurry over and ask her daughter what happened. Wei Ziqin glanced at him and then went forward to hold Arbor's little hand. She asked with a smile, "Jojo, you can stay as long as you want as long as you want. You can stay as long as you want, but where is Xiao Mo? Why didn't he come back with you?" "He didn't come back last night." Arbor was furious. "He went to pick up a woman and didn't come back to sleep the whole night. He said he would be back in an hour, but Jojo waited until breakfast was cold. I didn't see him." "What?" Everyone in the Qiao residence, including second uncle and little Huzi, couldn't help but shout. This little Mo was too unreliable. How could he leave Jojo at home just to pick up another woman? What a bastard! Qiao Zhongbang and Qiao Zhongxing were furious. "Where is he? Second uncle, let's find him and beat him up." As second uncle Qiao said the word theory, his eyes clearly revealed that he wanted to beat classmate Xiaoma up. Sir Jojo pursed his lips and snorted. "Who knows where he is now?" After saying that, she angrily ordered people to move the things into her pear blossom courtyard. She angrily waited for a while. When it was almost noon, she only received a message from Lai Tong, who was trembling with fear. His Highness said that he would be back later and asked the crown princess to have lunch first. Qiao Mu promptly shut the person outside with a bang before entering Paradise Planet in a flash. Poor Prince Mo rushed to the Qiao family in the afternoon. As soon as he returned to the Eastern Palace, he found out that the young crown princess had been angered and returned to her maiden home. He secretly complained incessantly and hurriedly rushed to the Qiao family without stopping. In the end, he was almost given the cold shoulder. Fortunately, his mother-in-law truly pitied this poor thing and turned a blind eye. She had Kai Xiu open the back door and secretly let him in. Mo Lian went to the Pear Blossom courtyard and found that Jojo wasn't there at all. She immediately knew that this little guy must have been angered back to Paradise Planet and might have gone into closed-door cultivation. This fellow complained incessantly and cursed his unreliable father and 18 generations of ancestors in his heart. If his father hadn't insisted on discussing the Greyfield village matter with him, how could he have delayed coming back to see his wife until so late? See, his precious little wife was unhappy. Chapter 3487. This fellow's heart was actually in a mess. He didn't know what exactly his wife was angry about. However, he had a strong desire to live. As long as his wife was angry, it was all his fault. Since he wanted to enter Paradise Planet, he had to admit his mistake to his wife. In the end, he summoned Little Tree, but there was no response. She started to panic a little. Oh no, his wife was really angry this time. She must have told Little Tree not to bring him into Paradise Planet. Mo Lian couldn't come up with a solution no matter how he thought about it, so he could only ruthlessly threaten the sapling. After coaxing and pestering for a long time, he finally entered. Just as he entered Paradise Planet, the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's figure flashed and he came to his side with a smile. He looked like he was watching a good show. What's wrong? Did you make the little girl angry? Where's my Jojo? Ah! The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal rolled his eyes. Let me tell you, Jojo is really angry this time. You didn't come home last night. The situation is very serious. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal chuckled as he followed behind him. Jojo doesn't want to see you anymore. Mo Lian turned to look at him. Jojo went into seclusion to cultivate. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal raised his head smugly. You want to see her? That depends on whether our Jojo is happy to see you. Mo Lian really wanted to slap this guy, but she controlled herself. She turned and dashed in the direction of the bamboo house. Jojo! The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal blocked him with his small fan. Hey, I already said that Jojo went to cultivate. Don't tell me you want to disturb her? Alright. Seeing how pitiful you are, I'll show you the way. What about you? Wait here obediently for our Qiao Qiao. After you see Jojo, you must behave properly. Mo Lian glanced at him from the corner of her eyes. After the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal finished his long-winded speech, he turned around and realized that Mo Lian had already disappeared without a trace. If you don't listen to what I have to say, you deserve to be rejected by Jojo. Arbor was sitting on a small bed in the bamboo house, cultivating by himself with the door closed. When she opened her eyes, a glimmer of light entered her eyes. Subconsciously, he used his divine sense to check his meridians and found that his 9 branch meridians were now filled with spiritual power like streams. She raised her hand and quickly shot out a stream of spiritual energy. That stream of water spiritual energy revealed a dense chill. It directly turned into an icicle in front of her, hanging upside down in front of her eyes. When Mo Lian pushed the door open, she saw the little fellow standing under the sharp icicle hanging from the ceiling, looking up at the icicle. The bright white light contrasted with the cold glint in the depths of her eyes, giving Crown Prince Mo a bad premonition at once. He hurried to his wife's side in a flash. Just as he was about to reach out to hug her, she dodged him. Mo Lian was a little anxious at once. He hurried to her side again, reached out, and hurriedly carried the little fellow who was bristling with anger. He cried out repeatedly, "Wife, hubby admits his mistake. Wife, I was wrong. Hubby shouldn't have stayed out all night and shouldn't have let you stay in the cold bed. Punish me to kiss you as many times as you like." Arbor glanced at him, looking at him expressionlessly. Get lost. Mo Lian, Jojo, it's because something happened at the last minute and Imperial Father kept me here to talk about it for a long time. Ask me, I'll confess to anything you ask. Chapter 3488. The man tilted his head and rubbed it against the top of her head. Jojo, I won't hide anything from you. Ask me anything you want to know. Last night, because of that Sue something, you stayed out all night and didn't come back at all. This was unbearable. Xiao Mu's small face was taut as she roared at him in anger out of humiliation. Mo Lien blinked his eyes and immediately understood. His wifey was probably angry because of this unlined garment. Because he didn't come back at night, his little wife mistakenly thought that he had delayed coming back to sleep because of the Sue thing. He hurriedly shook his head and raised a hand above his head as he swore, I swear, Jojo, I didn't stay out all night because of her. Then Kai Xiu said that you went to pick her up? Yes. Mo Lien didn't dare to hide anything at this time and hurriedly soothed his little wife's anger. He nodded and said, It's true that I helped pick her up, but after I came back, I stayed in the palace and was kept in the study by Imperial Father. Kai Xiu. Prince Mo turned around and roared as usual. Kai Xiu, this girl, how did she pass on the message? Look at how angry his wife was. Then he realized, this wasn't the Eastern Palace at all. This was Paradise Planet. Where did Kai Xiu come from? Don't you dare yell at Kai Xiu. The little fellow slapped his hand away in annoyance, her almond eyes bulging. What's the matter? Your father still wants to keep you for the night? What's there to discuss? Mo Lien didn't dare to laugh, but the little wife in front of him was fuming and trying hard to maintain her stoic expression. She was really a little adorable. This husband swears. I really stayed in the palace. Mo Lien hurriedly explained. Stubborn Chao, Wu Shaoyin, Imperial Censor Wang, and the other court officials are also in the discussion. I can call them all over. Arbor snorted, the little flame in her heart subsiding a few inches. What happened? Your father is really unreliable. She had just returned to the Eastern Palace, and yet another trouble had come. It was as if he was the only one in the world who could do the job. Wouldn't Lien die of exhaustion? Initially, he thought that the emperor was a reliable person, but from the looks of it, he was no different from old Wang of the Mo kingdom. Both of them liked to enslave their sons. Mo Lien heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that his wife's anger had subsided. He hugged her tightly and lowered his head to kiss her. Wife, you don't know how annoying our father is. When something happened in Greyfield Village, the first person he thought of was me. He also asked me to go to the village to settle some matters. He said that he wants me to leave tomorrow. What? Xiao Mu roared, unable to remain calm. Her Lien had just returned to the capital. Why did he have to go out on a mission again? I already said that I don't want to go, but my father kept glaring at me as if he expected better from me. He even nagged all day long, saying that a man should aspire to travel far and not follow his wife around and fool around with you all day long. I'm not fooling around. My Jojo isn't fooling around at all. The two spoke at the same time, then looked at each other. Arbor finally couldn't hold back her laughter. She turned her little head and snorted softly. Mo Lien saw that his little wife was finally smiling. He quickly reached out to pull her over and sat down on the bamboo stool beside him. Jojo, there was a large-scale zombie attack in Greyfield Village. It happened a few days ago, and it's quite serious. Chapter 3489. The day after tomorrow, I'll really go to Greyping Village. I'll go too. Our wedding date is set for the 6th of June. It's less than a month away. Mo Lien rubbed her head gloomily. You have to stay. You have to prepare the wedding dress and jewelry as soon as possible. Also, the Ministry of Rites will often bring over some things that need to be added for you to look over. Arbor frowned. Thinking that this was indeed the case, she couldn't help but nod slightly. All right then. Thinking that Jojo's Lotus was going to leave Dragonflame City for a while, the little fellow's mood instantly turned sour. However, the matter of the corpse puppet could not be delayed. She did not continue to obstruct him, but her eyes were a little listless. Whenever Mo Lien spoke, she would somewhat ignore him. Mo Lien couldn't help but find it amusing. Then, he pulled her into his arms and said softly, Jojo, you have to think of me. Do you know? When I think of leaving the capital the day after tomorrow and being separated from you for a period of time, I feel especially bad. Arbor didn't say anything. She just glanced at him listlessly. But don't worry. I'll definitely rush back by June at the latest. Definitely. Arbor turned her head and raised her hand to wrap around his neck. She asked in a muffled voice, "So from midnight until morning last night, you've been in the study discussing this matter with the courtiers? About the corpse puppet in Grey Ping Village?" Emolien nodded. Arbor immediately reached out to cover his eyes. "You didn't sleep the whole night." Emolien smiled slightly and gently pulled her little hand down. He gazed deeply at her, as if wanting to imprint her exquisite features in the depths of his heart. "Jojo, nothing is more important than you. You have to stay here well. You have to make me feel at ease, okay?" Arbor glanced at him and said in a muffled voice, "What can happen to me? You, on the other hand, have gone to such a dangerous place. Don't mess around in everything. I'll make more elixirs for you tomorrow. Bring them along." "All right. Is the news from Greyfield Village reliable?" Arbor suddenly asked. Emolien nodded. "Reliable. The news was brought back by that alchemist. She came from Greyfield Village. Since that place was surrounded by a large number of zombies, how did she get to the capital safely?" Arbor asked suspiciously. "Didn't you say that she was surrounded by bandits at Shirley Slope?" Arbor snorted. If they could break out of the encirclement of a large group of zombies, how could a few hundred bandits be a problem for them? "Yes, this matter is also quite suspicious." Emolien also nodded, but she couldn't help but complain in her heart. "But I've already sent people to investigate. I won't be able to receive any news in a short period of time." Emolien looked at her and smiled. "Jojo is right. An expert alchemist who came out of a nest of zombies doesn't look like someone who would be surrounded by bandits." "So they were luring you over yesterday?" Arbor said coldly. "Yesterday, didn't that Zhong Liping go to pick up that alchemist? Why did he encounter bandits at Shirley Slope?" "The bandits at Shirley Slope were there. They didn't rob us when they saw our carriage pass by." "Oh, when they saw us pass by, they suddenly jumped out to surround us and rob us?" "Moreover, Zhong Liping brought a few hundred people yesterday. They couldn't even take down a small bandit nest, so why did they have to call you over?" Chapter 3490. No matter how you look at it, it's comical. Arbor concluded. Prince Mo could only nod at his wife's outburst, agreeing that what she said made sense. "I don't like that pill refiner," Sir Jojo said angrily. "I feel that she's purely looking for trouble." Emolien's eyes brightened, and he immediately hugged his wifey as he cheerfully said, "Ciao ciao, ciao ciao, don't worry. Even if that pill refiner's pill refining skills are better than yours for the time being, hubby still won't fancy her." His Jojo cared about him more and more. He was happy. Arbor glared at him unhappily. "Do you think I'm jealous of her?" She only felt that this woman's motives weren't pure. Although they hadn't met yet, why did she feel that this woman was a bit pretentious? She brought the news of Greyfield Village to the Emperor so that she could show off her skills in front of the Emperor. How was being able to enter and exit a zombie lair unscathed all by herself not a skill? But she pretended to be weak and asked for help at the 10-mile slope. She even wanted Jojo's lotus to save her? No matter how he looked at it, he didn't like it. Was she pretending to be strong or weak? What a contradictory woman. He couldn't understand her. Emolien kissed his wife hard and said with a grin, "Who does my wife need to be jealous of? My wife is the best." Arbor glanced at him as if looking at an idiot. She snorted and said, "You're not hiding anything from me, right?" Emolien shook his head, but he kept muttering in his heart. Heavens! His wife's brain really wasn't for show. She was really smart. She could guess the whole story just by looking at the signs. She was so smart that it made him happy and distressed. Actually, when Emolien arrived at the 10-mile slope, he knew at first glance that the pill refiner had teamed up with Zhong Liping to scheme against him. With their abilities, it was impossible for them to be trapped by a mere 100 bandits in a place like the 10-mile slope. She was only putting on such an act to lure him into a trap and meet him first. How could the crown prince take the bait? Thinking that she was being pretentious, the The crown prince immediately brought his men back to the palace. Therefore, other than this point, Emolien didn't hide anything else from Xiao Qiao. He had indeed reached the 10-mile slope, but he immediately returned to the palace within 3 minutes. However, he was left in the study by the great emperor to discuss matters until dawn. Wife, don't think so much in the future, okay? Hubby is here for everything. Emolien stood up with her in his arms, and the two walked out of the bamboo building. At the same time, he came face to face with the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, who was waving a small fan, immediately glared at Emolien. He pointed at Emolien with his fan and shouted in a huff, "Xiao Qiao, why are you paying attention to him so quickly? I was still thinking about how to leave this brat hanging for half a day." Emolien instantly glared at him in annoyance. She pulled Jojo's little hand and said, "Jojo, don't listen to his slander." Arbor tugged at his little hand, but failed to pull it out of Emolien's grasp. He simply raised his hand and swiped at the air in front of him. In the halo of his demonic eyes, the scenery faded and the scene at the Qiao residence's main entrance appeared. A gorgeously dressed woman walked out of the carriage with the help of someone. She raised her head and looked at the Qiao residence's lintel. A cold smile flashed across her eyes. Arbor looked at the figure in the halo. She looks a little familiar. Of course she looks familiar. My Jojo, on the day of your grandfather's birthday banquet, didn't you release a debt? There, it's that stewardly from the pink house. She's here now. Chapter 3491. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, who was enjoying the show, waved his little fan and blinked his beautiful eyes, smiling happily. Jojo, how do you plan to deal with them? Do you need my help? He was so bored that he wanted to help Jojo beat them up. Arbor retracted the light from his demonic eyes and glanced at the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, then at Emolien. He asked with a puzzled expression, "When did I owe them a debt?" The two of them. The little fellow looked confused. Why was it so funny? It looked like this fellow had completely forgotten about the incident with Steward Lee of the pink house. Jojo, 5% for every 2 hours. Emolien reminded him in amusement. Arbor's brain finally connected. His eyes lit up and he nodded repeatedly. Oh, right, it's that big idiot. Emolien and Hu Jinchen exchanged a look and almost burst out laughing. Hearing this, they nodded and said, right, it's that big idiot. Arbor and the two of them left the galaxy together and pushed open the door with small steps. Wei Ziqin, Qiao Zhongbang, and the others were drinking tea in the little garden and staring at their daughter's door. The moment she saw her, Wei Ziqin hurriedly stood up to greet her. Jojo. Second Uncle Qiao also jumped up and ran quickly to Emolien. Little Emo, when did you come in? This fellow, didn't the main and second doors close for him? He must have climbed over the wall to get in. Emolien glanced at Wei Ziqin pitifully and complained, Mother! Second uncle won't let me in. Wei Ziqin patted his hand in amusement. All right, second uncle, Jojo must be fine now. Look, as she spoke, she gestured angrily in Arbor's direction. Second Uncle Qiao looked, and indeed, Sir Jojo's expression seemed much better. It seemed like that stinking brat had coaxed his little niece back. Only then did second uncle drop the subject. At this moment, Jolin hurried over from the other end of the garden path. When he saw everyone, he exclaimed, Father, father! Someone is coming! The Qiao family members looked at each other. Who's here? Qiao Zhongbang asked suspiciously. After all, their family had just settled down in this house yesterday. On the Divine Land, they had no relatives or friends. Who could be so well informed? They had just moved into the mansion yesterday, and someone had already come knocking on their door today? It's all right, father. He's here for me. Arbor said faintly and took the lead to walk towards the gate of the house. Jolin hurriedly caught up with her sister's footsteps and asked curiously, Sister, I see that those people's faces are very ugly, as if someone owes them millions of spirit coins. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal could not help but laugh. It's not someone who owes them money, it's them who owes my Jojo money. How much did you owe in the past 20 days? 5 cents every 2 hours. That's 24 hours a day. Let's count it as 25 days now. I don't even know how much I owe. How much did they lend me? Arbor herself could not remember. 1 million. When Arbor heard this, he was instantly displeased. Why is it only 1 million? 5 cents every 2 hours. 20 days isn't that much. Everyone, Arbor's group entered the hall in a grandiose manner and saw a woman with heavy makeup sitting there with a displeased expression. Steward Lee furtively shrunk his neck and pulled up his sleeves, standing behind the woman with an aged face. Chapter 3492. Seeing that the Crown Princess had brought people in, he immediately jumped up as if he had been electrocuted and shouted, "Grand, Crown Princess! Crown Princess!" Arbor glanced at him and her gaze fell on the woman with heavy makeup. "Who are you?" The woman in front of her was gorgeously dressed. She wore a strapless long dress that outlined her good figure. She wore a large string of sandalwood beads on her hand and a mole at the corner of her mouth, which ruined her good color. Time had already left its mark on her face. Although Sun Yang was still attractive in her middle age, she was no longer as delicate as a young girl. Wearing this peach-colored long dress naturally didn't add any points to her looks. Instead, it seemed unbearably gaudy. Yin Yang stood up and curtsied to Xiao Mu Mo Lien and the others in a well-behaved manner. Afterwards, she put on a nonchalant expression and said faintly, "Why does the Crown Prince Consort have to pretend not to recognize us? Haven't you been sending people to the pink brothel to remind us to pay our debts? It's just that the Crown Princess has been gone for more than 20 days. We can't pay our debts even if we want to." It was only then that Xiao Mu recalled that before she left, she had indeed sent someone to remind this pink house's manager not to forget his debt to her from time to time. If she didn't pay up, Sir Jojo definitely wouldn't let it go. When the time came, destroying her pink house would be a light punishment. Arbor nodded. Her figure spun and she sat down at the head of the table. Kai Xiu was very perceptive. She walked forward and handed a debt note to the young Crown Princess. Then she bowed and left. Arbor lowered her head and glanced at the debt note. She nodded and looked at Yin Yang. "You're the lady boss of the pink house? I don't dare to be the lady boss." "If you're not the lady boss, then why are you looking for me?" Arbor interrupted her self-deprecating words and said impatiently, "I have to find your lady boss to settle this matter. You small fries don't come looking for this Crown Princess to talk nonsense." Everyone was speechless. Yin Yang held her breath in her chest as the veins on her forehead throbbed. She hurriedly said, "Yes, I'm the lady boss of the pink house." "You're the lady boss, and you're saying that you don't dare to accept it?" The little Crown Princess said unhappily. "You're lying. This Crown Princess doesn't like to beat around the bush. If you have something to say, just say it." "Fuck, I don't dare. I was just being polite." "Why is it so tiring to talk to you?" For the first time in her life, Yin Yang, who had always been smooth and sly, had been angered by a little girl. Everyone could not help but look at her sympathetically, feeling that she was a little pitiful. "Since you're the lady boss, then let's cut the crap." Arbor slammed the note on the table. 30 million spirit coins, pay it. 333? 30 million. Steward Lee's cries were like an old rooster whose neck was being squeezed. His raised voice was practically piercing through the roof. Xiao Mu swept him a displeased glance. "What gall, you actually dare to yell at this Crown Prince Consort?" Steward Lee immediately looked like a defeated rooster. He drooped his head and cried out pitifully, "Crown Princess, this lowly one didn't do it on purpose. This lowly one, it's just too shocking." He had a long face. If crying could solve the problem, he was willing to cry until the sky turned dark. Arbor looked at him impatiently. A grown man being so long-winded, scram to the side. Chapter 3493. Don't you see that this Crown Princess is talking to your lady boss? Arbor glanced at Manager Lee in annoyance, then turned to Yin Yang and asked indifferently, "How is it? You should know that the time it takes for an incense stick to burn has already passed when I was talking to you. According to the calculation of 5% interest for every 2 hours, You have to pay another sum of interest now. In-young had lived for so many years and had interacted with all kinds of people, but she had never been as sullen as she was today. This little girl's words were really infuriating. She simply had the urge to not say a single word to her. Arbor glanced at her and said unhappily, "What's with that look?" Every time these people spoke a few words to Jojo, they would look very indignant and too lazy to continue talking to Jojo. If they didn't want to talk, then they wouldn't talk. Then they would chase them away and let them owe more money. Once they had accumulated 100 million in debt, they would directly go to her door and take over her pink building. Kai Xiao Kai Chi, see the guest out. Yes. Crown Princess. Kai Xiao hurriedly walked over with Kai Chi. She faintly said to In-young, "Lady boss, please." In-young was so angry that her nose was about to become crooked. It was Manager Li who hurriedly said in a low voice, "In-young, the longer we owe that debt, the more it will increase." In-young fiercely glared at Manager Li a few times. If it weren't for this guy who foolishly signed that debt, how could he have fallen into such a state? If it weren't for the fact that this guy still had some use for the pink building, she would have chased this guy out long ago and let him fend for himself while he paid the debt himself. In-young took a deep breath, then smiled mockingly at Arbor and said, "Crown Princess, if you have something to say, let's talk nicely. We're not people who don't pay back debts. It's just that your 5% interest, even if it's calculated based on 25 days, isn't right. It's doubled, okay?" Husband. Arbor turned to look at her husband. The Crown Prince's mouth twitched and he coughed lightly. With a straight face, he said sternly, "What do you mean? Are you saying that my Crown Princess can't even do accounting?" In-young couldn't help but want to howl like a wolf. That was because the Crown Princess couldn't calculate the accounts properly, all right? However, she did not dare to contradict the Crown Prince, so she quickly smiled and said, "This commoner did not mean that. The Crown Princess is extremely intelligent. Naturally, she can calculate the accounts clearly. Today, His Highness the Crown Prince was here to support this little Crown Princess. It seemed that she had no choice but to accept this humiliation." In-young took a deep breath and nodded, admitting defeat. Manager Li, give the spirit coin card to the Crown Princess. With a long face, Manager Li walked to the front of the Crown Princess and bowed as he handed over a spirit coin card. "Crown Princess, the interest plus the principal amount is a total of 31 million spirit coins. It's all in here." The little Crown Princess glanced sideways, and Kai Xiao immediately understood. She stepped forward and took the spirit coin card. After checking the amount, she nodded slightly at the little Crown Princess. After unexpectedly receiving 30 million spirit coins, the young Crown Prince Consort's mood immediately improved. However, there was still no expression on her little face. She faintly glanced at In-young and said coldly, "Give me the list of Hua clan's debts." In-young was stunned, and her eyes could not help but reveal anger. "Crown Princess, this is too unkind of you. That 30 million was already equivalent to daylight robbery." Chapter 3494. She didn't expect that the Crown Princess still didn't plan on letting them off. Could it be that she wanted to wipe out the 60 million debt of the Mu family's fifth branch's wife, Huane? How could there be such a good thing in this world? In-young had only taken out 30 million spirit coins, so how long would it take for her to earn it back? Now, the Crown Princess wanted to wipe out the 60 million debt with a single sentence? That was simply a lunatic's ravings. "Husband." Sir Jojo turned to look at Mo Lien in a huff. Mo Lien didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but she maintained a serious expression and continued to help the villain do evil. "Go, invite the capital governor over for this, Highness. The imperial court has already explicitly prohibited the use of stamp money. This pink house knowingly violated the law. It's simply unforgivable. Go invite the capital governor over and have him handle this matter." In-young was so angry that her nose kept twitching, and she almost spat out a mouthful of blood from her chest. Good, 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 you high and mighty children of influential families. Right and wrong, black and white, you can twist things back and forth, but this is how you humiliate people. Previously, The crown princess charged her 30 million spirit coins for a 2-hour period of 5% interest. Could it be that it wasn't a usurious stamp money? Now that it was her turn, she was being unreasonable in every way. This was simply preposterous. Arbor glanced at Yin, who was so angry that her hair was standing on end, and lightly harumphed. It seems that some people simply won't shed tears until they see the coffin. Mo Lien nodded and gave Hui Feng, who was standing on the side, a look. Hui Feng immediately cupped his hands in acknowledgement and turned to walk out the door. Wait. Yin Yang hastily stood up and shouted, "Wait, wait." She was so anxious that her voice trembled slightly. Arbor turned to glance at her and said indifferently, "What? Did Lady Boss change her mind?" Yin Yang gritted her teeth and clenched her fists in her sleeves. If she could, she really wanted to pounce over and bite this little crown princess. She was simply a hateful person. Arbor saw that her expression was filled with resentment, but she did not dare to do anything to him. He could not help but secretly laugh in his heart. In all these years, Yin Yang had never suffered a loss. Unfortunately, she had bumped into an iron plate like Jojo. She was in for it. Yin Yang took a deep breath and forced a smile. However, the smile on her face was even uglier than crying. "Manager Lee," Yin Yang called out. The cold sweat on Steward Lee's forehead almost dripped down. He hurriedly stepped forward and bowed slightly. "Yin Yang, find the note of the fifth wife's debt." Manager Lee immediately cried out with a long face. "But Yin Yang, the fifth madam owes us more than 60 million spirit coins. This debt isn't a small amount. The mistress of the fifth branch has paid more than 20 million spirit coins, right?" Arbor's expression was indifferent as he said, "If that's the case, then fine. Husband, let's call Stubborn Chow over and let him settle this case." Yin Yang inwardly gnashed her teeth. The common people did not fight with the rich, and the rich did not fight with the officials. This had been the case since ancient times. She naturally knew that if the capital magistrate was really invited, with the attitude of this black-hearted couple in front of her, they would probably urge the capital magistrate to convict her of a felony. At that time, not to mention that 60 million spirit coins would disappear without a trace, even the pink brothel that she had been operating for many years would probably be lost. Although the pink brothel was merely one of her businesses in the entire Jade Tripod City, it was still one of her businesses. Chapter 3495. However, if the pink brothel that was so well managed was destroyed by the crown prince and his wife just like that, Yin Yang wouldn't be able to sit still. Yin Yang took a deep breath and hastily put on a smiling face. She chuckled and said, "Crown princess, there's no need to be angry. It's not that this commoner isn't willing, it's just that fifth madam's debt has been owed for so long that it'll take some time to find it. Steward Lee, why haven't you brought fifth madam's debt note yet?" Steward Lee hastily went back to retrieve the note with a long face. However, he still couldn't figure out what was going on. He clearly came today to find the crown princess to properly reason with her, so how did he end up with Madame Hua's 60 million yuan debt? It was simply inexplicable. However, he was just a lowly steward, so he didn't dare to go against Yin Yang's wishes. He hastily returned to Amusement Alley and planned to retrieve the note before rushing back without stopping. Just as he exited Amusement Alley, Steward Lee saw two voluptuous women dressed extremely flirtatiously. They swayed their waists as they walked towards him. One of them was a woman in her early 20s with slightly tanned skin and a bright red face. She had a slender waist as she walked over with a smile. As soon as she got close to Steward Lee, she fell into his arms as if she had no bones. She even let out a coquettish voice that gave people goosebumps. "Steward Lee, where are you planning to go in such a hurry?" Seeing that it was this coquettish woman, Steward Lee revealed his two yellow front teeth and smiled. He casually pinched the woman's body with a moderate amount of force. "Chunner, I'm going out to take care of some matters. I'll have a good chat with you later." The woman named Chun Er in front of him was not beautiful, and her figure was average. However, her skills in bed were not to be underestimated. Chief Steward Lee had tasted her twice, and even now, he still felt that he had not had enough. However, he was in a hurry to deal with Yin Yang's matter, so he didn't tease the woman. "Big Sister Chunner, Look at how hurried Stewardly is. Where is he going? Xiao Yingchun coldly watched Stewardly leave in a hurry, and a mocking smile appeared on her lips. She had heard that today, Chief Stewardly accompanied Yin Yang to look for the young crown princess to repay her debt. He must have suffered a bellyful of anger from the crown prince consort at that time. She might have a chance to take advantage of it. When she thought of this, a venomous glint flitted across Xiao Yingchuan's eyes. Arbor, you have harmed me to this extent, it would be impolite not to reciprocate. Chief Stewardly took the debt note and returned to the Qiao family. He saw the Qiao family members leisurely sipping tea in the living room, chatting and laughing. They didn't care at all about Yin Yang, who was sitting on the side with a face as dark as the bottom of a pot. Everyone was chatting about Xiao Sen's homework and praising the young monk for doing well. Every day, when it was time, they would immediately wake Xiao Sen up to study. It was as if the time had been set. Seeing that Manager Li had returned, Arbor looked at him with a faint smile, nodded, and said, "Give it to me." Chief Stewardly turned around and glanced at Yin Yang. Yin Yang gritted her teeth and nodded heavily. Only then did Chief Stewardly step forward and respectfully hand the debt note to the young crown princess. "Chief Stewardly, I see that you're sweating profusely. You must have been in a hurry on the way back, right? Kai Xiu, pour a cup of tea for Chief Stewardly." "Oh, right, don't forget about the lady boss as well." "Yes." Kai Xiu covered her mouth and snickered. She turned around and poured a cup of tea for Chief Stewardly before holding it in front of him. Chief Stewardly stiffened his neck and received the tea with trembling hands. Chapter 3496. She held it in her hands like she was holding a hot potato and didn't know whether she should throw it away or throw it away. Cai Xiu turned around and poured another cup for Yin Yang. Yin Yang's expression was a bit uncertain. She looked at the tea on the table and didn't know how to react for a moment. "What? This is this tea bestowed by this crown princess. You dare to not give me face? Are you looking down on this crown princess?" Yin Yang gritted her teeth and gripped the teacup with trembling fingers. She fixed her gaze on the young crown princess. She naturally didn't dare to drink the tea the crown princess gave her for no reason. "Could it be that you thought this crown princess would poison you?" The little stoic's face darkened. Yin Yang and Stewardly both felt a piercing chill rush straight at their faces. Was the crown princess angry? Yin Yang smiled embarrassedly and suddenly said softly, "Crown princess, please don't be angry. We didn't mean it that way." "Then why aren't you drinking?" Arbor stared at those two with a threatening gaze, his gaze containing faint contempt. Yin Yang clenched her fists and exhaled deeply. She abruptly picked up the teacup and, as if she used all the strength in her body, was forced to take a big gulp. Yin Yang placed the teacup heavily on the table and stood up with a smile. "Since this matter is over, this commoner will not disturb you any further and will take her leave now." The young crown princess glanced at her indifferently and then nodded. "Emichim." Yin Yang instantly sighed in relief. She originally thought that the crown princess would find an excuse to make things difficult for her and Stewardly. Seeing that Yin Yang drank that cup of tea, Stewardly also hurriedly downed it. He then stood up with an embarrassed smile and bowed to His Highness the Crown Prince before hastily chasing after Yin Yang. When the two people exited the Qiao estate, they realized that their backs were drenched in cold sweat. The master and servant pair looked at each other. Stewardly pulled a long face and asked bitterly, "Yin Yang, what should we do? Is there any problem with the tea we drank?" Yin Yang sneered and shook her head. "I know a little about medicine. Don't you trust me?" Only then did Stewardly nod his head. He only dared to touch it because he saw Yin Yang swallow the tea. He was very clear about Yin Yang's capabilities. If someone wanted to poison her in front of her, they definitely wouldn't be able to hide it from Yin Yang's eyes. Yin Yang took a deep breath. She seemed to be suppressing a trace of anger in her chest as she said coldly, "Go back." Today's events were truly too depressing. She had never thought that she would be defeated so many times in front of the young crown princess. She did not even have a chance to retaliate. Stewardly saw that she didn't look worried, so he didn't dare to say any more nonsense. He hurriedly called for a carriage and helped Yin Yang into the carriage. The two of them didn't say anything as they went to amusement alley. However, as soon as the carriage made a turn, A group of agile masked men in black suddenly jumped down from the eaves. They pulled out their long swords and stabbed at the window of their carriage. Steward Lee was scared out of his wits and couldn't help but cry out in alarm. On the other side, Arbor put down his cup and coldly said, "We've only been back for less than a day and the news has already been leaked. They came to my Chow estate to show off." "Heh," Arbor said with an icy gaze. "Even if they don't die, they have to be taught a lesson. Lest everyone thinks that this crown princess is easy to bully." Xiao Zhongbang, Wei Ziqin, and the others looked at each other in dismay. Chapter 3497. Only now did she find out that Jojo had actually secretly made a move against Yin Yang and her servant? Wei Ziqin couldn't help but want to shed a tear of sympathy for Yin Yang and her servant. Not only did they come to give away money, but they were also turned against by Jojo and had to pay back a huge debt. They thought that this matter was over, but it turned out that it wasn't. There was probably a good show waiting for the two of them on the way back. How pitiful! Wei Ziqin and Xiao Zhongbang couldn't help but shake their heads. This couple was actually still too naive. The purple forest guards that Xiao Mu secretly sent out chased after Yin Yang and Manager Li all the way to the entrance of Amusement Alley. They only stopped when they reached the entrance of Amusement Alley. At this moment, Yin Yang didn't have a single good piece of flesh on her body. Steward Lee was in an even worse state. His nose was bruised, his arm was broken, and a large piece of his head had been sliced off by the sword light. Blood was gushing out of it. The two of them went out in a grand fashion and returned to Jade Tripod Market in grief like beggars. When hunchbacked old Lee saw their miserable state, he was so frightened that he almost fell to the ground. "Steward Lee, what happened to you?" Xiao Yingchun greeted him with a frightened expression. Just as she was about to reach out to support Steward Lee, he rudely pushed her away. Steward Lee's entire body was in unbearable pain, so how could he still think about romantic matters? When he saw Xiao Yingchun grumbling, he couldn't help but snort angrily. "Why are you still here? Hurry back to the pink house. Don't wander around all day if you have nothing to do." Xiao Yingchun instantly felt wronged and muttered, "Steward Lee, why are you scolding me like this? I'm just worried about you." At this time, Yin Yang had already been helped into the courtyard by hunchbacked old man Li. She was extremely flustered and couldn't help but look back a few times. She anxiously shouted, "Quick, quick, quick! Get someone to block the entrance of Amusement Alley. Quick!" She was scared out of her wits by those purple forest guards who had beaten her while she was down. Although she didn't know who had beaten them, she had a vague feeling that the Crown Prince Consort was involved in this matter. Who did she offend? How did she end up in such a miserable state? He lost his money and almost lost his life. Hunchback old Lee quickly brought his men to the amusement alley for an inspection, and the news he brought back was that no one was following them. Yin Yang collapsed on the stool. Old Lee invited a doctor from the Jade Tripod Market to treat her injuries. "What's going on, Yin Yang? Who's after you? How did you and Manager Lee end up in such a sorry state?" Yin Yang heaved a sigh of relief. She covered her throbbing chest with one hand and recalled the scene of dozens of agile men in black chasing after them. She couldn't help but feel a faint sense of panic in her heart. She was indeed too naive. It was probably because she had not been respectful enough in front of the Crown Princess. Who would have thought that retribution would come so quickly? "Yin Yang, it's the Crown Princess, isn't it? It was that malicious woman who did it." Xiao Yingchun couldn't help but shout, her eyes flickering with flames of fury. "I knew she was a bitch. She bullies the weak all the time and doesn't treat us commoners as humans." "Grandamong, lower your voice." After this incident, Steward Lee was completely afraid of that stoic-faced little Crown Princess. She wasn't someone he could offend. Their attitude today was still considered good, right? They even handed over spirit coins and debt. But he didn't expect that even so, they still incurred the wrath of the little Crown Princess and were hunted down. Manager Lee could not figure it out no matter how he thought about it. Chapter 3498. Why the hell did the young Crown Princess send people to kill them? Steward Lee looked around, afraid that one of the Crown Princess's hidden guards would suddenly jump down from the roof. If that happened, they would all be in trouble. Xiao Yingchun angrily said, "What are you afraid of her for? Heh, we have so many people in Jade Tripod Market, so why should we be afraid of her? Yin Yang, we absolutely can't let today's matter rest. I heard that the bitch brought the entire Qiao family back. Those people only have some mediocre martial arts skills. Just grab a few of them and you'll definitely be able to make that slut surrender without a fight. At that time, not only will we be able to take revenge for today, we might even be able to send that slut to the pink brothel and let her enjoy a." Before Xiao Yingchun could finish speaking, Yin Yang pounced on her and gave her a ruthless slap and a kick to her chest. She flew out like a kite with a broken string and smashed into a nearby cabinet with a bang. Half of the items on the cabinet were smashed into pieces and fell to the ground. It could be seen how fast and accurate Yin Yang's kick was. She didn't leave any face for Xiao Yingchun. "I think you're the vicious little bitch." Yin Yang glared at her with cold eyes and said, "You just want our entire Jade Tripod Market to fall into a state of eternal damnation." If Xiao Yingchun had really listened to Yin Yang and courted death by attacking the young crown princess, with the cultivation methods of those black-clothed people today, their entire Jade Tripod Market would probably be destroyed right before their eyes. "Guards! Send this slut back to the pink brothel. If there's nothing else, she's not allowed to leave that place. And no, Yin Yang, listen to me, Yin Yang, Yin Yang. Let go of me, let go." Xiao Yingchun struggled with all her might in the hunchbacked old man Li's hands. Her eyes shot out a venomous light, but she was powerless. She was thrown into the carriage and her throat was viciously choked. It was only then that she lost her voice. Do you understand what Yin Yang said? Old man Li used his large, rough palm to forcefully slap her slightly tanned face twice. In the future, don't act on your own initiative. Just do your job properly. Although Xiao Yingchun was filled with hatred, there was nothing she could do. The next day, Yin Yang suddenly realized that she had rashes all over her body. The symptoms didn't seem like poisoning, but she couldn't even leave the house. On the other hand, Manager Li was even more terrified. His illness was somewhat difficult to talk about. On the other hand, as the crown prince would be leaving tomorrow, the great emperor specially set up a banquet to send him off. Although it was only a small banquet held in the palace and not many people attended, the entire palace became lively because of this small banquet. The servants became busy like flowing water. The great emperor's harem was very clean. There were no concubines at all. Therefore, this small banquet should only be held by the Empress Dowager, the Emperor, Arbor, and Mo Lien. However, when Arbor arrived at the Extreme Time Hall's banquet hall, he discovered that there were two other unfamiliar women sitting beside the Empress Dowager. Seeing her enter, the two women stood up and bowed, saying in unison, "Greetings, Crown Princess." Xiao Mu reflexively narrowed her eyes as she sized up those two girls from the corner of her eye. Their faces were elegant and beautiful, each with their own merits. The woman on the left looked more docile than the woman on the right. The woman on the right had a long, slender neck, proud and graceful like a swan's. When she bowed, her head was also held high. "This is Alchemist Dan." Empress Dowager Chen pointed at the white swan. Chapter 3499. After speaking, he pointed to the gentlewoman on the left who was bowing and said faintly, "This is Princess Yenyun of Zhu Xi country. She has been in the palace for a long time, but the crown princess has been busy and has never met her." Arbor raised her eyebrows. Zhu Xi country's Princess Yenyun? Wasn't that the woman that the old woman wanted to give to imperial father to be Mo Lien's stepmother? She sized her up a few times and saw that Princess Yenyun nodded slightly and gave her a faint smile. Her appearance was very beautiful, and her temperament didn't seem like its tsundere. However, when she thought that this woman wanted to steal the position of Mo Lien's mother, she felt a little uncomfortable. Her gaze towards Princess Yenyun gradually turned cold. She had never met her mother-in-law. Although she hadn't seen her before, she knew that she was someone who couldn't tolerate even a grain of sand in her eyes. If she really let these strange women become Lien's stepmother, wouldn't her mother-in-law be angered to death when she woke up? No, definitely not. Arbor glanced coldly at Zhu Xi country's Princess Yenyun and said, "No need to be so polite." Princess Yenyun didn't get angry when she saw her cold expression. Instead, she nodded at her in a very gentle and friendly manner and said softly, "Crown Princess, Yenyun came uninvited. It's a bit rude." Since this small banquet only invited family members, it was really inappropriate for Princess Yenyun and Shan Yi-su to come. However, Yenyun refused the Empress Dowager's invitation several times and couldn't refuse. She could only brace herself and come. However, Pill Master Dan, who was sitting next to her, seemed very happy. He must be very interested in this small banquet. One couldn't hit a smiling person. The little crown princess was indeed a bad person, but she never threw a tantrum at a smiling person for no reason. Seeing that Princess Yenyun's attitude was good and she spoke to her apologetically, she couldn't keep her face cold. She nodded and said, "Princess is a guest from afar. Since you were invited by the Empress Dowager, you can enjoy the banquet in peace." It was obvious who brought these two women here. The great emperor wouldn't be so bored. He had probably forgotten about Princess Yenyun long ago. Empress Dowager Chen's heart was in a mess and she broke out in a cold sweat. She thought that the little crown princess would definitely fly into a rage when she saw the two extra people in the hall. At that time, she could take the opportunity to go to the emperor and say that the little crown princess was too domineering and unruly. She really needed to hire a nanny to teach her well so that she would not embarrass the royal family in the future. Unexpectedly, the little crown princess seemed to be a completely different person today. Not only did she not flare up at all, but her etiquette and rules were also very proper. He really couldn't see through this person. Thinking of that day when the little crown princess looked at her coldly like a ghost and threatened her word for word, Empress Dowager Chen's heart tightened and her hand holding the fan tightened. Although this little girl was young, she was definitely a ruthless character. Just as Xiao Mu was led to sit down at the round table, someone came over to announce with a grin that the Prince of Zheng, Mo Shikong, had come with the Princess Consort of Zheng. Arbor frowned slightly. The Prince of Zheng's family had been very quiet recently, as if they were invisible. She had forgotten that her adopted brother's family would also be attending the small banquet. "Greetings, Your Highness the Empress Dowager." Prince Mo Shikong and Princess Consort Shi Yongyan stepped forward and bowed. Chapter 3500. Hence, Xiao Mu's gaze landed on that vassal consort Zheng, and she gazed at her meaningfully. The Shi family didn't have time to mess with them these 2 days. After the crown prince left the capital and she was free, she would definitely come to their family's second miss to give a grand gift. Shi Yongyan bowed her head slightly in greeting. Suddenly, she felt a slight chill on her neck. She subconsciously raised her head and met Arbor's cold eyes. For some reason, Shi Yongyan's body trembled slightly. There was a kind of panic that spread from the bottom of her heart. The little crown princess's gaze was as cold as water. It was bone-chilling, frightening people to the point that they didn't dare to take a second look. What was going on? Shi Yongyan couldn't help but feel a burst of fear. A chill ran up from the soles of her feet. Her strange behavior immediately attracted the attention of Mo Shikong, who was beside her. Mo Shikong quickly reached out to hold her hand and passed on a faint trace of power to her. His eyes were unreservedly sharp as he coldly turned to Arbor's direction. There seemed to be invisible sparks in the air, making chi-chi sounds. In the 2 consecutive calls of "His Majesty has arrived" and "His Highness the Crown Prince has arrived," it slowly disappeared. Empress Dowager Chen chuckled and let Mo Shikong and his wife rise. Everyone also rose to greet His Majesty and the Crown Prince. Princess Yenyun and Alchemist Dan greeted Mo Shikong and Princess Consort Zheng before sitting down. "Alchemist Dan, are you used to living in the palace?" the emperor asked casually. Dan Isu stretched her beautiful and slender neck and nodded with a smile. "Very used to it. Thank you for your concern, Your Majesty." Arbor couldn't help but sneer in his heart. However, he didn't show it on his face. When Mo Lien saw Mo Shikong and his wife, as well as the 2 extra idlers, he merely creased his brows. Afterwards, he attentively picked up food for his wife and served her food. The Crown Prince originally thought that only the Empress Dowager would be invited to this small banquet. He didn't expect to invite Mo Shikong and his wife, as well as Princess Yenyun and Alchemist Dan. Inviting Mo Shikang was a bit more prestigious. In any case, Mo Shikang and his wife were his nominal brother and sister-in-law. But why did Princess Yenyun invite him? There was also no need to invite Pill Master Dan over. It was just a small family gathering. Why would they invite these random people? Although Mo Lian didn't say anything, she couldn't help but feel a little annoyed. It seemed like the old madam's naive idea still hadn't been dismissed. She still wanted to introduce Princess Yenyun to his imperial father. The emperor pretended that he didn't know the Empress Dowager's plan. He exchanged a few words with Sangaon Su and said, "Originally, I invited you here to treat the Empress's illness. However, the situation is a little urgent now. Let's wait until you return from Grey Ping Village before we take a look at the Empress." Su Ming's eyes were bright and she smiled faintly. "This humble girl will naturally obey your Majesty's decree. Don't worry, your Majesty. I'm very familiar with the area around Greyfield Village. I'll do my best to assist your Highness." Arbor was taken aback. His hand that was holding the chopsticks paused. He glanced at his husband and glared at him threateningly. "You didn't say that this woman would go with you?" The Crown Prince was also taken aback. Clearly, he didn't know either. It seemed like the Emperor and Pill Master Dan had reached a consensus in private. Mo Lian frowned. "The journey is long. There's no need for Pill Master Dan to trouble you." Chapter 3501. Single-clothed Su didn't seem to understand the Crown Prince's tactful refusal at all. She turned to look at the Crown Prince with sparkling eyes and said with a faint smile, "Su is very touched that Your Highness the Crown Prince sympathizes with Su, but Your Highness doesn't need to worry about Su. Since Su was able to crawl out of that zombie nest, she naturally has a way to bring Your Highness group inside stealthily." Heh, she kept saying, Su. It looked like she was very familiar with the Crown Prince. The young Crown Prince Consort glanced at her, a hint of indifference in her eyes. Truly a self-righteous fellow. She would just sit on the side and watch how her husband slapped her in the face. Mo Lian creased his brows and coldly swept her a glance. He turned to say to the Emperor, "I'm not used to bringing women with me in the army." Single-clothed Su's faint smile froze. The Emperor also couldn't help but be taken aback. He then advised his child, "Alchemist Shan is at least familiar with the environment there, and her pill refinement skills are miraculous. If you bring her along, you'll get twice the result with half the effort, and father will also be at ease." Mo Lian shook his head. "No need. It's inconvenient for a woman like her to follow the army." As a result, single-clothed Su's smile completely froze on her face. She didn't expect His Highness the Crown Prince to speak so bluntly and not give her any face. She was a divine-rank alchemist renowned in the 3 provinces after all. When had she ever suffered this kind of disrespect? Single-clothed Su didn't show any dissatisfaction on her face. She merely froze for a moment before smiling again and saying, "Since Your Highness the Crown Prince insists that you don't need Su to follow, then Su won't join in the fun." "How can that be?" The Queen Dowager hastily pulled her hand and advised, "The journey to Greyfield Village is long and fraught with danger. If there isn't an outstanding alchemist in the army, how can the Crown Prince's safety be guaranteed? There are alchemists and apothecaries in the army, so there's no need for the Queen Dowager to worry." Mo Lian icily interrupted the elderly lady's words and picked up a bamboo shoot for his wifey. The little stoic was expressionless, as if their words didn't match her at all. She only ate 2 mouthfuls of the food the Crown Prince gave her. Her small mouth moved, but she didn't feel like responding to them. The Emperor was baffled, and he reflexively turned to look at the little stoic. However, he was amused by her nonchalant attitude. "Crown Princess, what do you think?" The Emperor couldn't bear to see his daughter-in-law idling on the side. Hearing this, Empress Dowager Chen turned to look at Arbor and said calmly, "The Crown Princess is a sensible person. She should know how to persuade the Crown Prince." Arbor glanced at her, put down his chopsticks, wiped his mouth, and said expressionlessly, "I'll listen to my husband. If my husband feels that it's not appropriate to bring a woman into the army, then don't bring her." Mo Lian curled his lips. "Emperor, you don't look like someone who's easy to talk to. Listen to everything your husband says? Why don't I see you being so virtuous and sensible usually? Emperor couldn't help but want to bicker with this daughter-in-law. After thinking about it, he restrained himself. Emichim, as a father, he couldn't lower himself to a child's level. Calm down, calm down. Empress Dowager Chen was also choked by the little crown princess, and she couldn't help but frown. Crown Princess, it's the entire army's fortune to have Alchemist Dan accompany the army. With Alchemist Dan, I believe that the lives of the soldiers will be greatly guaranteed. No need. Mo Lien coldly rejected her. Everything in the army will be handled by the army physician. Chapter 3502. Empress Dowager Chen still wanted to say something, but the emperor waved his hand and said indifferently, since the crown prince doesn't want to take Alchemist Dan with him, then so be it. Dan Yi-su nodded understandingly. Empress Dowager Chen couldn't help but frown when she saw this. She really felt a bit stuffy in her heart. It could be said that the crown prince was a dragon and phoenix among men, but his heart was simply too honest. Look at this moment. There were so many people sitting here, but the crown prince only had eyes for the crown princess. As the crown prince, he busied himself around his wife all day long. Looking at how he served the dishes, it was clear that he usually did this at home. Empress Dowager Chen looked at Arbor with a sharper gaze, as if she was looking at a demon who would bring disaster to the country and the people. Her eyes were full of disapproval. Arbor was too lazy to pay attention to this old lady. Anyway, people who didn't like her no matter how they looked at her. She wouldn't live with this old lady in the future, so why should she be angry with her? She was too lazy to pay attention to her. She ignored the old lady, but the old lady didn't want to let her go. She wanted to find fault in everything. After a few bites, the old lady said indifferently, King Jing, I just heard that you and the crown princess had some disagreements a few days ago? Is there such a thing? Mo Shikong's fingers tightened slightly. He hid the trace of anger in his eyes and lowered his head in silence. Sitting next to him, Princess Consort Jing, Shi Yongyan, hurriedly smiled and smoothed things over. It's nothing. Thank you for your concern, Empress Dowager. Speaking of which, the crown princess is His Highness's sister-in-law. How can His Highness be at odds with her? The old Empress Dowager glanced sharply at Shi Yongyan and then turned to look at Arbor. I heard that the crown princess took care of King Zheng's younger brother, Su Shihua, in the academy a few days ago? You seem to have heard a lot of things. Arbor sneered. His attitude was naturally not respectful at all. The Empress Dowager's eyes flashed with anger. She had long known that this girl was extremely disrespectful to her. At this time, seeing that she dared to mock her in front of the great emperor, she slammed the wine cup on the table with a bang. How rude! Empress Dowager Chen turned to look at the emperor and tried to persuade him. Your Majesty, you saw it with your own eyes. The crown princess is so unruly. How can she be the mother of the nation in the future? In my opinion, we should find 2 nannies to teach the crown princess proper etiquette in the palace. Mo Lien angrily tossed the wineglass away. Without saying a word, he pulled his wife up. She coldly said, in the future, Imperial Father doesn't need to invite us husband and wife to such small banquets. Everyone's faces immediately turned awkward. Did the crown prince think that everyone present, except for his Imperial Father, was an unrelated person? Empress Dowager Chen was so angry at Prince Simo that she almost fell backwards. She trembled as someone helped her up and pointed in the crown prince's direction. The emperor couldn't help but feel a bit angry. Although he had been very filial to the Empress Dowager for the sake of the previous emperor, between his son and the Empress Dowager, he could only choose his son. Thus, he couldn't help but grumble, Empress Dowager, why do you keep mentioning nannies? The crown princess is a spiritual realm cultivator. She usually has to cultivate. The meaning behind her words was, who would have the free time to come and learn your palace etiquette all day long. Chapter 3503. Little glutinous dumpling, stop right there. The crown prince's back stiffened slightly. This unreliable father of his actually called him by such a strange name in public. He really wanted to slap him. The emperor hurriedly flashed in front of the two and glared at his willful son with displeasure. Imperial father knows that you dote on your wife, but you, he lowered his voice and said to the crown prince, your grandmother is old. She threw away her wine cup and left after saying a few words to your wife. Aren't you making things difficult for your wife? Besides, why are you being so calculative with an old lady like her? It's not difficult for me. Arbor looked at the emperor blankly. What's difficult about me? My mother taught me that I have to obey my husband when I get married. I have to do whatever my husband says. Mo Lien, the emperor, the two of them looked at each other. The emperor glared fiercely at his son several times. His daughter-in-law's bad habit was most likely caused by his son's indulgence. She even said that she had to obey her husband when she got married? Ha! If his son wanted to rebel, just see if this little thing would reach out and viciously slap his son to death. She kept saying that she had to obey her husband when she got married because his simple-minded son had completely expressed what she wanted to express. Of course she had to obey her husband because she was simply obeying her own heart. Useless fellow! The emperor glared at his son several times, using his eyes to convey this message. Mo Lien looked innocent and raised her hand to firmly grasp Arbor's small hand. Imperial father, my wife is mine. If I don't dote on her, who else would dote on her more? Look at this palace. Everyone wants to make things difficult for her. Mo Lien tilted her head and considered for a moment, then said, I'd better not leave the capital. What if those blind people come to torment her again after I leave the capital? What should I do then? My wife is so weak, helpless, and pitiful. She'll be taken advantage of and wronged. The emperor rolled his eyes every time Mo Lien said something. When she said that she was weak, helpless, pitiful, and wronged, the emperor's nostrils were about to spit fire. What a deceptive son. Your father really wants to ask you, ever since the two of you returned to the divine land, when has your wife ever suffered any losses or grievances? I'm not going to Grey Ping village. Mo Lien had a solemn expression as she said, Imperial father, it's better to send foster brother to handle such an important matter. Mo Shikong's eyes lit up slightly. Taking advantage of the situation, he got up and cupped his hands. This son is willing to serve imperial father. The great emperor narrowed his eyes and turned back to roar at his son, you said you'd go, but now you're backing out. Aren't you just worried that your wife will be bullied? Imperial father promises you. After you leave, no one will be able to bully her, okay? Then you have to give her a token. Otherwise, how could she convince the masses? Mother's phoenix seal had been sealed for a long time, so it would only accumulate dust if it was left there. Why don't you give her to my wife? The crown prince suddenly suggested. His phoenix eyes rolled around as he glanced at his father. The great emperor was fuming with rage. He wanted nothing more than to slap this place to death. This rascal actually thought about the empress's phoenix seal. The crown prince blinked and fished out a token from his sleeve. Otherwise, I can only give the imperial token to my wife. Otherwise, I won't be at ease leaving like this. I'm so worried. Why don't you let me bring my wife to Grey Ping village? The great emperor wanted nothing more than to spit a mouthful of blood on his son's face. Keep your imperial token. Chapter 3504. The emperor's decree was no joke. It was the only decree that could mobilize millions of soldiers in the entire divine prefecture. This stinking brat was treating it like a child's play. He wanted to give it to his wife as a gift. Fuck, if it weren't for his precious son, he really wanted to slap this stinking brat to death. The emperor's face darkened as he said angrily, Go, get the phoenix seal and give it to the crown princess. Empress Dowager Qin jumped up from her seat and almost jumped up. How can I do that? Empress Dowager Qin's voice changed in surprise. Giving the phoenix seal to the crown princess was something that had never happened in the thousands of years since the divine prefecture's founding. That was something that absolutely could not be done. Empress Dowager Qin said sternly, Your Majesty, this is unreasonable. For thousands of years, the divine prefecture has never given the phoenix seal to the crown princess. Zheng Wang, Mo Shikong, also lowered his head slightly at this time, hiding the disappointment in his eyes. Compared to himself, the emperor trusted his own son more. He even gave something like the emperor's decree to his son. It was obvious that he had high hopes for him. As for himself, although he tried his best to perform in front of the great emperor's attitude towards him was always the same, neither salty nor indifferent. Princess Consort Jing raised her hand and tugged at her husband's sleeve. She put on a moderate smile. She knew very well that she and her husband only needed to be spectators. There was no room for them to interfere in this matter. Whoever the emperor wanted to give the phoenix seal to was the emperor's business. As for Empress Dowager Qin, the older she got, the more muddle-headed she became. She didn't even think about who she depended on to live a life of luxury in the palace. The crown prince was the emperor's only son. The Empress Dowager was always against the crown prince and always wanted to compete with the little crown princess. If this wasn't stupid, then what was? Shi Yongyan restrained the sharp glint in her eyes. She lowered her head and smiled without saying a word. Empress Dowager Qin still refused to give up. Your Majesty, this is absolutely unacceptable. The crown prince and the crown princess are still not officially married. How can you give her the phoenix seal? Moreover, even if they were married, they couldn't hand over the phoenix seal, right? The phoenix seal was used to control the imperial harem. If the phoenix seal was given to the crown princess, wouldn't she, the Empress Dowager, be inferior to the little crown princess in the future? No, absolutely not. She was dead set against it. The Empress Dowager looked at Arbor with a gloomy face, then turned to the emperor and said earnestly, "Your Majesty, this is absolutely inappropriate." However, the great emperor ignored the old lady and ordered his eunuch to carry out the task. Not long after, the eunuch came in with small steps, holding a white jade box in his hand, and respectfully handed it to the great emperor. Empress Dowager Qin's eyes instantly sharpened. He stared at the stubborn great emperor in disbelief. As far as she was concerned, the actions of the grand emperor were simply stupid beyond compare. How could he listen to the crown prince and directly give the phoenix seal to the little crown princess? This was definitely inappropriate. However, she couldn't think of a better reason to persuade the great emperor to give up on this terrifying idea. The crown princess and the crown prince are about to marry. Giving the phoenix seal to her isn't a violation of the ancestral laws, the great emperor said calmly. Chapter 3505. In his view, if the young crown prince consort could have more people be more respectful to her after she gained control of the phoenix seal, there probably wouldn't be any trouble for her in the future. She also wouldn't have to terrifyingly turn into a violent person and retaliate against others. Therefore, the world would be at peace and the country would celebrate. This was a wonderful thing. Moreover, he didn't want to go against his son's wishes. Speaking of which, the emperor was actually a father who doted on his son. It was just that he wouldn't admit it on the surface. He was a wise and decisive emperor of the divine prefecture. How could he dote on his son? Did he still have any shame? Xiao Mu cast the emperor a sidelong glance before looking at Her Majesty the Queen Dowager, whose face was flushed red and who was trembling uncontrollably all over. She apathetically reached out to take the mutton-fat white jade box that the emperor handed over, casually opening it to take a look. A golden phoenix seal was placed in the middle of the box. It shone brightly and looked extremely dazzling. Arbor felt that the phoenix seal was quite small and pretty. He picked it up and looked at it. He saw a phoenix soaring in the 9 heavens at the bottom. The carving was extremely exquisite and lifelike. He liked it even more. This phoenix seal belongs to your mother. I'm giving it to you now. You have to take good care of it. Don't lose or damage it. The great emperor was still worried, so he warned the child not to play with the phoenix seal on impulse. She wasn't stupid. Why would she play around with the phoenix seal for no reason? She wasn't crazy. The little crown princess looked at the emperor as if he was looking at an idiot. That look made the emperor want to go berserk. Why was this child so uncute? Your Majesty! Empress Dowager Qin wanted to say something, but the emperor reached out to stop her. All right, Empress Dowager. This emperor has made up his mind. That's all. Empress Dowager Qin was anxious and angry, but she couldn't do anything. She could only nod and admit defeat for now. However, in her heart, she couldn't help but be more wary of the little crown princess. Don't look at this girl's cold and unscheming appearance. She definitely wasn't that simple now. She went with the flow and accepted the crown prince's words. Didn't she feel embarrassed at all? Only then did the great emperor smile. He turned around and glared at his son. You can rest assured now. Go to Greyfield Village and do everything well. You've brought shame to your father. Understood. The crown prince replied unwillingly. All right, the food is getting cold. Come and sit down. The great emperor roared at his son and daughter-in-law. Stop throwing a tantrum. Your grandmother is old and has lived in the palace for so many years. Naturally, she is conservative about everything. As her children, you should show her some respect. You must not have any more conflicts with your grandmother. The great emperor gave the crown prince and the little crown princess a warning look. The young couple curled their lips in a non-committal manner. They had the same expression and the same look in their eyes, which made the great emperor feel both amused and annoyed. These two children. When they were in the lower star domain in the past, didn't his branch brothers feel stifled when they saw these two clumsy fellows? This son of his was definitely a little scoundrel in the lower star domain as well. Far away on Seekong planet, the old great King Mo lay sneezed 3 times in a row, looking dazed as if someone was nagging at him. After Arbor sat down, Shi Yongyan smiled and hurriedly poured her another cup of wine. Then she said, Crown Princess, please. Chapter 3506. The young Crown Prince Consort looked meaningfully at this woman and nodded lightly at her. Empress Dowager Chen adjusted her state of mind and smiled at the emperor. Princess Yen Yun came from afar. Your Majesty has been busy with official business and didn't see her much. This is the 3rd time you've met, right? Princess Yen Yun had been standing obediently at the side. When she heard the Empress Dowager mention her, she had no choice but to raise her head. Her eyes were clear and gentle as she looked at the emperor. She smiled faintly and said, Yen Yun greets your Majesty. The emperor nodded slightly, but his eyes narrowed. It seemed that these people were quite concerned about his preferences. He took a closer look and found that Princess Yen Yun's phoenix eyes were quite similar to his wife Wu Xia's. It was obvious that these people had worked hard. The emperor suddenly felt a little tired. He glanced at the Empress Dowager and felt that this old woman was meddling too much. Not only did she worry about his son and daughter-in-law, but she also always wanted to reach into his harem. The emperor frowned slightly and suddenly felt that the dishes in front of him were a little more tasteless. His poor Wu Xia was still lying in that cold place. Because he was worried that every time he opened that layer of ice, he might damage her body. He had to endure and not disturb her sleep. His Wu Xia wasn't actually dead. He could hear her heartbeat. But after so many years, her heartbeat had become slower and slower. If he couldn't make the soul-returning pill as soon as possible, he was afraid thinking of this. The emperor didn't want to stay here and listen to Empress Dowager Chen's endless chatter about Princess Yen Yun. Little glutinous dumpling, you have to leave at dawn tomorrow. If there's nothing else, go back early and pack up. The emperor meant that the meeting was adjourned. Poor Empress Dowager Chen, who was enthusiastically talking about Princess Yen Yun, was suddenly interrupted and looked a little embarrassed. Shi Yongqian pulled her husband up and bowed to the emperor at the same time. Father, rest early too. The emperor nodded and gave his son a look before leaving. After saying goodbye to the Empress Dowager, he strode away. Empress Dowager Chen glared at the emperor's back with a bit of annoyance. She suddenly felt like she couldn't control her son anymore. No matter how much she nagged, the emperor was like a one-track mind. Look at what he had done to his harem over the past decade. Many palaces and courtyards were empty. Even if there were some beauties in the harem, their fates were the same as Princess Yen Yun's. Some of them had been in the palace for 3 to 4 years, but they still didn't get to see the emperor. Princess Yen Yun didn't get angry. Instead, she smiled and said, Your Majesty and the Empress are deeply in love. I've long heard about it. Your Majesty doesn't need to force Your Majesty to accept her. The little crown princess looked at Princess Yen Yun curiously. She saw that her eyes were clear, as if she really didn't care about His Majesty's attitude. He immediately felt that she should be an interesting girl. The two of them left the palace and boarded the carriage. Starlight accompanied them all the way to the Eastern Palace. "Jojo, after your husband leaves, you must take good care of yourself." Mo Lien reached out and pulled her into his arms, gently brushing away a strand of hair from her temples. "You must make me feel at ease." Sir Jojo nodded vigorously. She raised her hand and wrapped it around his neck, whispering, "Come back early." His phoenix eyes curved slightly. His thin lips pressed down and covered hers. Chapter 3507. The land of Tsang Prefecture was filled with immortal traces. Looking down, one would see a meandering water vein slowly flowing across the land toward the Sea of Forgetfulness. Taiji Palace, it was already dusk. As the setting sun shone, the melodious sound of a zither drifted through the air. Noble Consort Duan led Nanny Lin all the way to her son's bedchamber under the sunset glow, and her expression became a bit strange. Along the way, the Taiji Palace was completely empty. He didn't know where those dogs of a slave had sneaked off to hide. Noble Consort Duan knitted her brows and glanced sideways at Nanny Lin. Nanny Lin said with a smile, "Perhaps His Highness dismissed them all." Noble Consort Duan thought about her son's temperament and nodded in deep agreement. That's right, her son never liked having too many people around him, and he didn't like having a group of servants disturbing him. According to his temperament, she was afraid that what Mother Lin said was true. Mother Lin reached out to push open the door and walked in with Noble Consort Duan. Both of them revealed a trace of surprise. This bedchamber was also empty without a single person in sight. Inside the spacious bedchamber, yellow silk gauze curtains that hung to the ground slowly fluttered in the wind. The long window was only half open, and there was a faint sandalwood fragrance burning inside, but Duan Yu was nowhere to be seen. Noble Consort Duan and Nanny Lin searched around the spacious bedchamber but didn't find him. The master and servant looked at each other, and their expressions simultaneously changed. A junior eunuch happened to poke his head out at the bedchamber's entrance. Just as he wanted to shrink back, he was berated by Nanny Lin, who was by Noble Consort Duan's side. "Xiao Kazi, what are you doing sneaking around?" Nanny Lin shouted angrily. That junior eunuch called Xiao Zi jumped in fright and hastily ran in with his neck shrunk. He quickly saluted, "Greetings, Noble Consort." "Where is His Highness?" Noble Consort Duan asked angrily with a sullen expression. "Good, you bunch of wicked servants, you actually dare to make things difficult for His Highness? There isn't even a single servant to serve in this enormous Taiji Palace? You guys are also hemming and hawing about where His Highness went. What exactly are you doing?" Nanny Lin coldly reprimanded. Xiaozi was so frightened that he rolled onto the ground and repeatedly kowtowed as he cried out, "Your Highness, please calm down. Your Highness, please calm down." Still not telling the truth? Mother Lin sternly reprimanded. His Highness has not come out since he went into seclusion a few days ago. He is still in the underground secret room." The young eunuch stuttered, almost unable to speak a complete sentence. Actually, His Highness had been in seclusion for a total of 13 days. Before His Highness went into seclusion, he told them that he could come out in 7 days. But now, it had been more than 6 days and there was still no movement. The eunuchs and palace maids in Taiji Palace were actually worried to death, but they were too scared to make a sound. Usually, everyone would hide themselves away, afraid that they would be the scapegoat if something happened. Now that Noble Consort Duan was here, Xiaozi had no choice but to come out and meet her. Actually, Xiaozi was also panicking. His Highness had not shown up for so many days. Could it be that he was possessed? If something really happened to His Highness, then it would be the end of their lives for these servants. Xiaozi's face was sullen as he replied in a sobbing voice, "Every word this servant said is true. May Your Highness, Noble Consort Duan, please understand." Noble Consort Duan immediately stood up. "Where is the secret room? Bring me there to take a look." She was really too worried about her son. He had not come to pay his respects to her for so many days. As expected, something had happened. Chapter 3508. Xiao Kezi looked up at noble consort Duan nervously and said with a bitter face, "Your Highness, Prince Chen said not to disturb him when he is in seclusion." "How dare you?" Mother Lin scolded. "Do you still want to hide it from Her Highness? If His Highness is in seclusion for a long time, he will definitely tell Her Highness. Since he didn't say, he will definitely come out in 3 to 6 days. Noble consort Duan was flustered and felt that her mother's words were very reasonable. Could it be that something really happened to him? She tried her best to stay calm and sober and looked at Mother Lin. Then she scolded Xiao Kezi to lead the way and led them to the small underground room. This small room was built in the back hall for the convenience of the master's cultivation. After walking down the stairs, noble consort Duan and Mother Lin saw several stone rooms with different patterns engraved on the door grooves. "Which one?" It's the innermost room," Xiao Kezi said with trepidation. Noble consort Duan glared at the servant. "His Highness hasn't come out for so many days. Don't you servants know to come to my palace to report?" These people really didn't care about her son. Noble consort Duan's eyes instantly became sharp and cold. Xiao Kezi trembled and quickly led the two to the door of the small stone room. Your Highness, it's right here." Noble consort Duan nodded slightly and raised her hand to touch the cold stone door. Then she pressed her finger on a round stone plate. Just as she was about to press it down, Xiao Kezi couldn't help but remind her in a low voice, "Your Highness, although I am a mortal, I know that cultivators are most afraid of being disturbed during their cultivation. If we accidentally disturb His Highness, will it cause His Highness to go into chi deviation?" He said carefully. Noble consort Duan's hand that was pressing the stone buttons suddenly stopped and she couldn't help but hesitate. She didn't know if she would harm her son in an impulse. Xiao Kezi bowed behind the two and whispered, "Your Highness, why don't we go up and wait?" Noble consort Duan felt her eyelids twitching and felt that something was going to happen. She shook her head. Just as she withdrew her hand, she heard the door of the stone room rumble from inside. The stone door slowly moved upward. Duan Yu's slender figure appeared at the door. When he saw his mother, he was a bit surprised. "Mother? Why are you here?" Noble consort Duan carefully sized up her son, took his hand and asked, "Ali, why do you look so pale? Aren't you cultivating in seclusion?" Although she couldn't cultivate, she at least had some common sense. Usually, when a cultivator came out of seclusion, they would be very refreshed. Unless there were signs of chi deviation, noble consort Duan's heart skipped a beat. She held her son's hand and asked, "Ali, are you hiding something from your mother? Your face is so pale. Did you encounter some difficulties in your cultivation?" Duan Yu forced a smile and shook his head. "Mother, what are you saying? Nothing happened at all. Let's go up first." After saying that, he helped his mother out of the underground room and returned to the bedroom. "Ali, don't hide it from your mother." "Why would I hide it from mother?" Duan Yu smiled and helped his mother sit down. He then asked, "Did something happen on mother's side?" Noble consort Duan shook her head with a smile. Chapter 3509. In a few days, Mother will be accompanying your royal father to hunt in the plains of Great Xia. Since you don't plan on going, you must be careful in everything you do in the capital. Mother has to pack up these 2 days, so I'm afraid I won't have time to take care of you. So I came a few days in advance to see you and chat with you." Duan Yu squatted down in front of his mother with a smile. "Mother, don't worry and go play. What could happen to me? After the half-month vacation ends, I still have to return to the Royal Academy. At that time, I might not be able to return until around New Year's Eve." Okay. Noble consort Duan lovingly gazed at her son and patted his head. "Son, mother has nothing else to ask for now and only hopes that you will get married soon. If you can have someone who cares about you and treats you wholeheartedly, you will be satisfied." Duan Yu's heart ached, but he tilted his head and feigned a relaxed smile. "Mother, your son is still so young, yet you're already in a rush to chase your son away from you? In the Divine Province, Your son is still an infant at this age. It's too early to talk about marriage. Why don't you stay by my mother's side and be a filial son? What do you think, mother? Noble consort Duan irritably poked his forehead. You're so indecent all the time. You're used to coaxing your mother. Mother, your son's every word is true. How was I teasing you? Duan Yu blinked with a grin. Noble consort Duan scrutinized him for a good while. Don't talk about other things. Just talk about why your complexion was so poor earlier. Duan Yu honestly replied, I was too greedy for advancement, so my realm was a bit unstable. Is that really all? Noble consort Duan looked at him suspiciously. That's right. Duan Yu nodded with a grin and pulled noble consort Duan's hand. Mother, your son is so formidable, so what could happen? You can set your mind at ease. After saying this, he even glanced at his mother rather smugly. Noble consort Duan was amused by him and nodded. All right then. After mother leaves, you have to take good care of yourself. Understood, mother. Noble consort Duan chatted with her son for a bit more before she left with a smile on her face, supported by Mother Lin. Z, you can leave too. Close the door. After his mother left, Duan Yu's expression instantly chilled, and he ordered indifferently. Z did not dare to say anything else. He quickly nodded and left the room. Just as he closed the doors to the palace hall, Duan Yu collapsed onto the couch like he was deflated, and his complexion instantly turned even paler. Brat, do you still want to continue struggling? I've tried so hard to persuade you so much. Why don't you know what's good for you? An old voice abruptly emerged from the cold air. Shut up. Duan Yu fiercely rebuked. His hand pressed against his chest, and he found it difficult to breathe. Don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Don't forget, I'm your ancestor. That voice icily said, if it weren't for my bloodline entering your body, would you have your current realm in cultivation that soared by leaps and bounds? Long-winded. Duan Yu clenched his fist and directly erased that voice from his mind. An eerie chill suffused his body, and lustrous beads of sweat trickled down his jade-like forehead. At worst, he would just gouge out his bones and blood to return your bloodline. You want to force him to give up half of his body? Dream on. Chapter 35:10. Imperial capital of the Divine Prefecture Eastern Palace. Kai Xiu ran over to report to her, beaming with joy. Crown Princess, a large batch of blank jade slips has arrived from outside the palace. Do you want to go out and collect them now? The Crown Prince had been gone for half a day, and Arbor was leaning against the bedside listlessly, flipping through the medical book in his hands from time to time, looking somewhat absent-minded. Hearing Kai Xiu's voice, Sir Jojo raised his little head. Let's go take a look. 100,000 blank jade slips had arrived. That was naturally an excellent thing. She had drawn so many talisman arrays in the lower star region, and had used up all the jade slips in her possession. She had been waiting for these blank jade slips for the past few days. Kai Xiu went forward with a chuckle, draped a coat over her, and called Kai Chi out to arrange a carriage. The delivery of the jade slips has been stopped at the Imperial Palace's North Gate. Kai Xiu smiled and said to Arbor, Crown Princess, go take a look when you're done. This little Crown Princess had been silent for most of the day, reading by the window alone. She must have begun to miss His Highness the Crown Prince. Kai Xiu wanted to distract the little Crown Princess, lest her thoughts become too heavy, so she deliberately instigated her to go out for a walk. Li Yi. Kai Xiu called out twice. Li Yi jumped in from the window like a ghost, looking expressionlessly at the little Crown Princess. Your subordinate is here. Kai Xiu's mouth twitched, and then she coughed lightly. All right, the Crown Princess is going out. Come with us. Li Yi hugged her sword and stood to the side. When the little Crown Princess started walking, she hugged her sword and followed behind them silently. It was currently afternoon, and the sunlight was very dazzling. The little Crown Princess couldn't help but squint her eyes when she walked out. After boarding the carriage, she leaned against the soft cushion, hugging a jar of peach biscuits, and chewing them one by one in her mouth. Lotus and the rest should have boarded the ship by now. This time, the army would be traveling by water, bringing along close to 50,000 to 60,000 people. Their speed of travel should not be too fast. Kai Xiu nodded heavily and said with a smile, "Crown Princess, you don't have to worry too much about His Highness the Crown Prince. You've given His Highness so many pills and talismans, and there are many pharmacists and alchemists in the army. There are also many people with special abilities, so there shouldn't be any danger on this trip." Arbor nodded with a listless look. He handed the jar of peach biscuits to Kai Chi and sat up cross-legged. "With these jade talismans, I'll be able to finish the drawing tonight. Tomorrow, I'll be able to do some serious business." Kai Xiu couldn't help but twitch her mouth. She knew this little crown princess too well. If the little crown princess mentioned something serious, it would definitely be something serious like murder and arson. She wondered who had offended her again. Kai Xiu shook her head and said with a smile, "Crown Princess, you won the competition at the Mu family. I remember that there was a prize." The little crown princess looked as if she had just woken up from a dream. She immediately nodded and said, "Kai Xiu, luckily you have a good memory. I forgot about it." "It's fine. After we finish our business tomorrow, I'll make a trip back to the Mu family." As they spoke, everyone had already arrived at the Imperial Palace's north gate. From afar, they saw 2 carriages used for loading goods parked there. Which of the guards didn't recognize the famous little crown princess? Seeing her get off the carriage and run over, they quickly put on a solemn expression and bowed in greeting. Chapter 35:11. Greetings to the Crown Princess. Arbor waved her hand, indicating that they could dispense with the formalities. She followed them and hurried to the front of the 2 carriages. She ran to the carriage and opened the curtain to take a look. She took one of the thin pieces of jade and nodded repeatedly. She said to the honest craftsman who delivered the goods, "Well done." The thickness of the jade piece was just right, and the size was just right. It was pure white and flawless, and it was very warm in her hand. Presumably, after she finished making the jade talisman, it would be even more beautiful. It doesn't matter if we slowly polish the rest. Remember to send the goods when you have them. Kai Xiu, give them a reward of 10,000 spirit coins. Kai Xiu smiled and answered. She went forward and handed a bag of spirit coins to one of the craftsmen. The craftsmen were flattered and nodded repeatedly. They were just ordinary craftsmen. When had they ever received such honor? They were just making some jade pieces. Unexpectedly, they received such praise from the noble crown princess. In addition, they would receive a reward of 10,000 spirit coins. They simply wanted to wake up from their dreams. Thus, the few of them swore that they would continue to work hard to process the jade slices. After they happily unloaded the bags of jade slices from the carriage, they respectfully drove the carriage away. A white jade talisman suddenly appeared in front of Arbor's eyes. It was full of purple light, and all the blank jade talismans on the ground were absorbed into it. Some of the guards at the gate stared at the jade talisman hanging in the air with shining eyes. They secretly said in their hearts, "No wonder everyone says that the Crown Princess is an extremely powerful great talisman master." It's really so. With just a casual move, such a huge storage talisman was able to take away all the jade slips that were piled up like a small mountain on the ground. Compared to the inner world of ordinary people, which was 3 to 5 cubic meters, the storage space in the hands of the Crown Princess could be described as empty. A great talisman master was really powerful. She could casually think about how many things she could collect, and it was just a matter of a storage talisman. Arbor naturally didn't know that these guards worshipped her in their hearts. She raised her hand and grabbed the purple storage talisman. Then she turned around and looked at Kai Xiu and the other 2. "It's still early. Do you want to go shopping?" Kai Chi was the most lively. When she heard that she could go out for a stroll, she immediately clapped her hands and cheered, nodding her head repeatedly. The 4 of them then boarded the carriage and had the coachman drive the carriage towards the bustling Changle Street. The carriage stopped at the entrance of Kaidai Pavilion. The 4 of them got off the carriage and heard a commotion coming from the street corner. "Wow, Alchemy Master Dan is giving out a gift today. Everyone, let's go and take a look." "Who is Alchemist Dan?" "You're really ignorant and inexperienced. That's the first and youngest divine-grade alchemist in our divine continent. The pills that he makes are hard to find even with tens of millions of spirit coins. Xiao Mu, Kai Xiao, and the others looked at each other in dismay. Li Yi frowned. She hugged her sword and asked mechanically, "Crown Princess, do you want to go over and take a look?" Arbor shook her head with an uninterested expression. No need. She was going out for a stroll today and taking Kai Xiao and the rest to have a meal. She really wasn't interested in knowing what Alchemist Dan was going to do. Li Yi nodded and followed the little crown princess into Kaidai Pavilion with Kai Xiao and Kai Chi. When Manager Hu of Kaidai Pavilion saw who came in, he immediately smiled so widely that his teeth could be seen and his eyes couldn't be concealed. Chapter 35:12. Crown Princess, you finally found the time to come. If you still didn't come, shopkeeper Hu lowered his voice and winked at her. I'm afraid that the holy rice, spirit vegetables, and spirit fruits in this shop will be sold out again. Arbor nodded. I'll give you another batch later. The old shopkeeper immediately smiled so widely that his teeth disappeared. All right, Crown Princess, please head upstairs first. Thus, he arranged for the shop assistants to serve the young Crown Princess and her group. Arbor, Li Yi, Kai Xiao, and Kai Chi were heading upstairs when they heard the sound of footsteps and a fragrant breeze. Looking up, they saw Princess Consort Jing, Shi Yongqian, walking down the stairs with a soft and slender figure and a charming face. When the two met, Princess Consort Jing smiled sweetly and nodded at Arbor. Crown Princess. Greetings to the Crown Princess. Shi Yongqian secretly lowered her eyes to hide the trace of unwillingness in them and bowed. She had learned her lesson and didn't dare to be arrogant in front of the Crown Princess. After the incident at the general's estate, Shi Yongqian didn't dare to get up before the Crown Princess asked her to. Arbor swept a glance at her and didn't ask her to get up. She only stared coldly at Shi Yongqian in front of her. After not seeing her for a period of time, it seemed that she had been living quite comfortably and her realm seemed to have improved. Who did he get such a huge benefit from? Right now, she had actually leaped from a 5th grade to an 8th grade spiritual master? She used her spiritual eye to check Shi Yongqian's body, and the corner of her mouth couldn't help but curl into a faint mocking smile. A body created by using spirit herbs undoubtedly looked like an 8th grade spiritual master, but her actual combat ability was probably still stuck at the 5th grade realm. A large amount of herbs wouldn't be of any help to her body. It would only further damage her body and cause her to fall into a false state of advancement. However, Arbor didn't care about all this and didn't need to tell this Shi Yongqian. In any case, just let her continue to court death. She didn't have much time left anyway. Thinking of this, Arbor coldly glanced at Shi Yongqian again. He walked past her half-squatting body with his head held high, not giving her any face at all. Shi Yongqian was so angry that her face flushed red. She turned to look at her elder sister, Princess Consorting, Shi Yongyan. Elder sister, what do you think of this crown princess's attitude? So domineering and unruly. She was just giving her a proper bow, but she actually gave her such a reaction. It was simply infuriating. Completely unreasonable. Shi Yongyan could tell that the crown princess didn't like her second sister very much. However, it made sense when she thought about it. The young crown prince consort had whipped her second younger sister the first time she met her second younger sister. There was no way that the crown prince consort would like her. At this moment, she didn't know why, but she felt that the crown princess's gaze towards her second sister was extremely cold, as if it contained broken ice blades. It was so cold that it was a bit frightening. Shi Yongyan smiled and patted her second sister's hand. Don't think too much. The crown princess's temper is like this. She's still young, so we'll get used to it. Shi Yongqian was instantly furious. That night, Shi Yongqian returned home with a belly full of anger. After throwing around and hitting for a long time, she asked the servant girl cowering beside her, "Is there any news of Miao Sheng?" "Not at the moment, Mississippi," Shi Yongqian frowned. She had received news that the crown princess had brought the Qiao family to the capital. She didn't know if the news was true. Early the next morning, the Shi family's door was crowded with people. Chapter 35:13. As soon as the gatekeeper opened the door, he was shocked by the scene in front of him. He saw a large group of onlookers crowding around his gate, looking at him with a strange expression. As a member of the 6 noble families, this servant was used to being a tyrant. How could he tolerate a crowd of onlookers in front of the Shur residence? He immediately shouted, "What are you doing?" and was about to step out of the door to chase the crowd away. But when he stepped out, he bumped into something hard. He stared at the air in front of him dumbfoundedly and subconsciously reached out to touch it. As soon as he touched it, he found something strange. He saw that the finger was sinking into the ground along with the fluctuating light halos. As if it was attracted by something, the finger was suddenly rebounded by a force, giving him a fright. He didn't know what was going on, but the onlookers outside saw everything clearly. They saw that the entire Shur residence was surrounded by a large talisman array, completely covering the Shur residence. This talisman array seemed to have built a transparent protective layer, like a transparent bowl, completely covering the Shur residence. The manservant didn't know that there was such a barrier at the door. When he rushed out, everyone saw with their own eyes that he bumped into the thin wall of the bowl and was immediately rebounded by the force. Everyone couldn't help but look at each other in dismay. Everyone had a look of surprise on their faces. These passers-by were actually out to buy groceries early in the morning. They saw that this place was filled with purple light that dyed half of the morning sun. Thus, they were attracted to this place with curiosity. But when they got closer, they found that the Shur residence, one of the 6 noble families, was surrounded by a large talisman array. How scary! Who was so determined to go against the Shur residence that they actually set up such a barrier above the Shur residence? Wasn't this a death trap for everyone in the Shur residence? The manservant's face turned pale and he quickly rushed out of the door. With a loud bang, his entire body was miserably rebounded by the force and fell heavily to the ground, revealing a dumbfounded expression. Everyone could clearly see that the binding power of this talisman array was extremely terrifying. Once it was hit by an external force, it would be repelled with 10 times the force. A group of onlookers gathered outside the Shur family's house and looked around. They shook their heads in sympathy, but at the same time, they couldn't hide the excitement in their eyes as they asked around what was going on. The manservant crawled up from the ground and limped into the mansion, crying out in alarm, "Master, Master, something bad has happened." The head steward of the Shur family walked out from the corridor and saw the panic-stricken manservant who was shouting loudly all the way here. He couldn't help but step forward and give him a slap across the face. "What's the fuss about? Our Shur family is such a big family business. How could anything bad happen to us?" The Shur family's butler harumphed angrily. Just as he was about to reprimand the servant exclaimed, looking as if he had seen a ghost, "It's the real butler. Something bad has happened. Butler, go out and take a look. Our main entrance has been surrounded by people using special means. We can't get out at all." "That's utter nonsense," the butler reprimanded. Although the Shur residence wasn't the most prestigious among the 6 noble families, as an old family, who would dare to cause trouble at their doorstep? Chapter 35:14. Patriarch Shur pushed open the door and walked out. His face darkened at the sound of the footman's voice, and he released a strong suppressive aura. What happened? The manservant was so scared that he kept quiet out of fear. His eyes were trembling as he looked at his master with trembling eyes. The steward of the Shur family turned around and cupped his hands at Patriarch Shur. "I'm sorry, Patriarch. It's my fault for not disciplining my servant properly. That's why he ran amok and disturbed your cultivation." Patriarch Shur replied coolly with a cold face. He was about to turn around and walk back into the room when a figure suddenly appeared behind him. The eldest son of the Shur family hurriedly said, "Father, something bad has happened. Someone has set up a confinement talisman array above the Shur family and we're all trapped inside." Patriarch Shur's expression changed abruptly. The footman hurriedly got up from the ground and nodded repeatedly. "Patriarch, it's true. It's true. Just now, I wanted to open the door and go out, but I was bounced back by a wall. There was nothing in front of me, but I couldn't get out no matter how hard I tried." Patriarch sure couldn't help but fly into a rage. Who dares to play tricks outside our sure family? Take me out and have a look. Patriarch sure shouted angrily. Just as he turned around and walked to the door, several elders with ugly expressions came knocking on his door. Patriarch! Patriarch! The elders said one after another, did you find out who's causing trouble in our sure family? What's the matter with that talisman array? Patriarch, the entire sure family is now trapped inside this confinement talisman array. We have to find a way out. Patriarch Sure's head was about to explode from their words, and he felt a little dizzy. He raised his hand to silence their cries and said with a sullen face, everyone, don't panic. Let's go to the door and see what's going on. Okay. The elders nodded in agreement. They followed Patriarch Sure and his entourage to the main entrance of the Sure family. The footman hurriedly ran forward and pulled open the two doors inwards. The faces of Patriarch Sure and the others darkened at once. At this time, more and more people gathered at the Sure family's entrance. Looking at the way the crowd gathered at the entrance, there seemed to be an endless stream of people. There seemed to be more than 1,000 people gathered. What nonsense! The elders could no longer maintain their composure and scolded angrily, what are they doing? Was this group of people here to see the Sure family make a fool of themselves? Reality proved that this was indeed the case. However, when the crowd outside saw Master Sure and a group of elders appear at the door, they all backed away timidly. The crowded and bustling crowd instantly fell silent. Many pairs of curious eyes swept over Patriarch Sure and the others. Everyone wanted to know if Patriarch Sure and this group of powerful elders could break through the shackles of the gate and walk out from inside. There was a hint of anger in Patriarch Sure's eyes. He stretched out his hand and shouted at the crowd, all of you, step back. The elders, Sure family's eldest son, and the steward and footman all took a few steps back. One of the elders even scolded indignantly, these bastards. Don't wait for me to get out. When I get out, I won't let any of them off. Of course, the crowd didn't know that these elders were cursing them in their hearts. They were just watching the show. Chapter 35:15. The eyes of the onlookers lit up when they saw House Headsure order for everyone to move aside. It looked like House Headsure was going to make a big move. Would House Headsure be able to break through this transparent barrier? What a strong confinement glyph formation. Several cultivators descended from the sky and landed in front of the crowd. The woman standing at the very front was surrounded by 2 or 3 female cultivators. Her eyes were like the stars in the sky, shining with light. When this female cultivator appeared, the male cultivators behind her couldn't help but bow respectfully and smile respectfully at her. Fairy Hao Fei. The female cultivators beside Hao Fei swept an indifferent glance over them and didn't speak. When the common people saw that even the cultivators had come to watch the commotion, they couldn't help but feel a bit more daring. When one of the women saw Hao Fei standing next to her, she couldn't help but muster up her courage and say to her, Fairy, you're also here to watch the commotion. I don't know what kind of powerful enemy the Sure family has provoked, but they've covered their entire house from top to bottom. They're trying to think of a way to get out right now. Hao Fei smiled and couldn't help but look curiously at the entrance of the Sure family's house. House Head Sure's old face was cold as he channeled spiritual power into his hands and suddenly sent a palm flying towards the entrance. Hum! A faint sound of air current came from the air. Everyone stared at each other with wide eyes. Only a few cultivators saw that after House Head Sure sent out that palm strike, an even stronger air current bounced back at him. His strength was so great, and his speed was so ferocious that it made people gasp in amazement. Hao Fei's eyes instantly widened. House Head Sure had sent out a palm strike with his cultivation of the 12th level of the spirit realm, but the force of the counterattack exceeded that of the 15th level of the spirit realm. In her opinion, it was no different from the 3rd level of the spirit realm. Hao Fei couldn't help but sigh in amazement. She didn't know if she would be sent flying with her palm if she was trapped in this talisman array. Would she also suffer an even stronger rebound force? This kind of formation could be said to be heaven-defying. Bam! Patriarch Shur barely managed to catch the rebounding force and suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. This sudden turn of events shocked all the elders of the Shur clan, including Shur Dalong and the housekeeper. Patriarch! They cried out in shock. The patriarch of the Shur clan was sent flying by this force, crashing heavily into a camphor tree behind them. The crowd gathered outside the Shur family's gates were horrified to find that even the towering tree had been broken in half by Master Shur's back. From this, one could see how powerful it was. Father! The eldest son of the Shur family panicked and hurriedly rushed over to support the head of the Shur family, who was bleeding profusely. Father! Father! The eldest son of the Shur family hurriedly reached out and massaged his father's back a few times. With trembling hands, he took out a large pile of medicinal pills and stuffed them into his father's mouth. While the head of the Shur family swallowed, blood continued to flow out of his mouth. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper, and there was a stifling feeling in his chest that could not be released. House Head! The elders were all dumbfounded when they saw House Head's wretched state. They looked at each other and then at the crowd gathered outside the Shur family's gates, whispering to each other. Their embarrassment turned to anger, and they couldn't help but shout in unison, "Everyone, let's go together." Chapter 35:16. The Shur clan master was vomiting blood when he heard their cries and wanted to stop them. He had been tricked once and knew how powerful this talisman array was. It was unlikely that he could break it with brute force. However, his mouth was stuffed full of medicinal pills and he was vomiting blood, so the words that came out of his mouth were like gossamer. Without waiting for him to finish, the few impulsive elders all flew to the door. At the same time, they gathered a violent spiritual power in their hands and smashed it against the wall of the gate. Chi. What? Ah! Bam bam! After a few loud bangs, the elders retreated at the speed of light and were flung back by the door's barrier. They crashed into the limestone floor and half of the wall collapsed. Everyone curled up in pain, curling up into the shape of a shrimp as blood spurted out of their mouths. Anxious and angry, the Shur clan master coughed out 2 more mouthfuls of blood. The Shur clan eldest young master was so shocked that his limbs turned cold. He looked at his father in his arms and shouted, "Elders! Elders!" The elders immediately fainted from the pain. The power of their combined attack was naturally much more ferocious than the Shur clan master's. Therefore, the recoil they received was also much more violent than the Shur clan master's. After this, their internal organs were almost ruptured. Cracks also appeared in their Dantian's spiritual ruin realm. They immediately fainted. The onlookers outside the door were even more shocked and frightened. Heavens! The result of the combined attack of so many Shur clan elders was so tragic? Hao Fei couldn't help but click her tongue in wonder. She exclaimed, "What a powerful talisman array! So powerful!" "Sister Hao, what talisman array is this?" A round-faced female cultivator couldn't help but ask. "This is a confinement talisman array. It can't have more than one confinement effect." Hao Fei looked at the 36 jade talismans glowing with purple light in the sky and couldn't help but exclaim, "If I'm not wrong, this should be a talisman array set up by an Earth-rank Great Talisman Master." Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Earth-rank Great Talisman Master? In the entire upper 3 provinces, the number of people who could become Earth-grade Great Talisman Masters could be counted on one's fingers. Which Earth-grade Great Talisman Master did this? He acted so swiftly and decisively, not giving the Shur family any way out. Speaking of which, the Shur clan was really unlucky. Of all the people they could provoke, they just had to provoke a powerful Earth-grade Great Talisman Master. Close the door. Close the door. Patriarch Shur lost his composure at this moment and yelled at the steward and the servant. The butler and the manservant hurriedly stepped forward and slammed the door shut. When they turned around, they could see the panic-stricken expression on each other's faces. Was everyone in the Shur family trapped here? At the same time, the Mu family. Inside the clan's gloomy dungeon, there was no sunlight at all. Mu Rochuan had been locked up here for more than half a month, and she was about to go crazy. For so many days, no one in the clan was allowed to see her. Mu Qingya couldn't see her daughter either. Until today, when Mu Rochuan was taken out of the dungeon, she realized that her daughter was so thin that she could be called a bag of bones. Rochuan. Mu Qingya had just taken a few steps forward when she was startled by Mu Rochuan's gloomy eyes when she raised her head. Her daughter's eyes were clearly filled with unforgiving and resentment. Chapter 35:17. Was she holding a grudge against her? But there was nothing she could do. The patriarch had ordered that no one was allowed to enter the dungeon to see her. Although Mu Qingya was worried about her daughter, she could not disobey the old patriarch's order. Old Master Mu was sitting in the main seat in the court. Several elders, the patriarch, and many brothers of the Mu family were present as well. This was a public trial. As Mu Rochuan's mother, Mu Qingya made an exception to come to the main court to listen to the trial. However, she did not have much right to speak. Mu Rochuan, do you admit to your crimes? The upright elder Dao spoke in a dignified voice. How could an evil talisman master appear in a talisman aristocratic family? This was the biggest joke in the world, and it was a disgrace to the Mu family. Rumors that the eldest daughter of the Mu family was a talisman master had already spread. Many people came to the Mu residence every few days to make a fuss, demanding an explanation. In everyone's opinion, a terrifying existence like a talisman master must be dealt with as soon as possible, lest it became a threat to the entire divine mainland when it grew stronger. What crimes should I admit to? Mu Rochuan said sternly. She raised her bound hands and glared fiercely at everyone in the court. I don't admit to my crimes. I'm not guilty at all. It's all of you. You cowardly and incompetent people can't even protect your own daughter and granddaughter. Someone else said that they would punish me, and you want to punish me. Ha! Then she burst into wild laughter. She did not seem like a normal person at all. Old Master Mu frowned slightly and sighed. Let's not talk about whether you're a talisman master or not. You tried to harm your own sister during the competition and tried to use a talisman to kill her. Are you still not admitting to your crimes? She deserves to die. Mu Rochuan's eyes shot out a poisonous glint. She went against me time and time again. She's just a village woman from the lower star domain, but she doesn't have the self-awareness of someone from the lower star domain. Shut up. Old Master Mu could not take it anymore and roared at her. He looked at her with disappointment. Rochuan, you've disappointed me. Mu Xingchen looked at her indifferently and did not say anything. He only shook his head. Disappointed? Ha! Disappointed? Mu Rochuan screamed at them, What did you tell me when I was a genius? You are the hope of the Mu clan. You are the only one who can inherit old ancestor Chaoyang's legacy. You will definitely become a heaven-rank great talisman master in the future. Now, you're saying you're disappointed in me? It's because in your hearts, there's a better candidate to inherit the legacy of ancestor Xiaoyang. Mu Roxian sneered, Why should I become a useless chess piece to be abandoned when a better person appears? Why do I have to give up everything that I've worked so hard for so many years? If it were you, would you be willing? Do you know how to do it? Bastard! Mu Jingfeng slapped the table and stood up, slapping Mu Rochuan's cheek. This heavy slap in the face dissipated the last bit of kinship in Mu Rochuan's heart. She stared at them coldly and mockingly tugged at her lips. It's precisely because I don't want to lose and disappoint you that I ended up like this today. She turned to look at Mu Xingchen and coldly said, Brother, help me pass a message to Arbor. Chapter 35:18. Today, I, Mu Rochuan, will end up like her in Arbor in the future. When the day comes when an even more powerful talisman master replaces her position in Arbor, she will be just like me, pitiful and pathetic. Ha! After saying that, she started laughing maniacally. Mu Xingchen had already lost all patience with this younger sister whom he had watched grow up. He coldly said, Don't worry. Jojo's temperament isn't as stubborn as yours. Perhaps you don't know this, but Jojo has always felt that there's always someone better than him. He's never been as arrogant and egotistical as you, thinking that it's unforgivable for a Jojo from a lower star domain to surpass you. After he said this, he turned his eyes away and did not look at her again. Mu Rochuan, on the other hand, laughed with tears in her eyes, a sharp and cold glint flashing in her eyes. Today, all of you look down on me, thinking that I, a talisman master, have tarnished the family's reputation. In the future, I want each and every one of you to be unworthy of me, Mu Rochuan. Mu Jingfeng coldly said, according to the family rules, cripple Mu Rochuan's cultivation, break her arms, and chase her out of the Mu family. Throw her to a remote branch and let her perish on her own. Mu Qingya exclaimed, Old master, don't. Grandpa Mu also frowned. Isn't the punishment too severe? No matter what, she was still his granddaughter. This child was still young. She had only taken one wrong step, and it was not as if she could not be saved. His original intention was to have this child swear to the heavens that she would never use talismans in the future. He would spare her life and let her go to a remote branch family to strengthen her muscles and bones and temper her temperament. Father, although I'm Mu Rochuan's father, I definitely can't condone her actions. Old master! Mu Qingya cried. She wanted to say a few more words of persuasion, but Mu Jingfeng glared at her with a warning gaze. Take her away. Jingfeng. Elder Mu frowned. He wanted to say if this punishment was too harsh, but he saw Mu Jingfeng wave his hand and directly had people drag Mu Rochuan away. Mu Rochuan didn't say anything else. She just laughed as she was dragged out. In the evening, Arbor received news about the Mu family from the night pavilion. He only skimmed through the information and then indifferently tossed it aside. Li Yi went forward to destroy the documents. Her eyes were filled with doubt as she asked, why did the Mu family only deal with Mu Rochuan now? Waiting for me to come back, Arbor said indifferently. Since she wasn't around, if he had secretly dealt with it early on, wouldn't he not be able to sell it in front of her? The little crown princess could not hide the disappointment in her eyes. Crown Prince Consort. Kai Xiu hurriedly walked in and bowed. Someone from the Mu family has come to deliver a letter to Crown Prince Consort. Okay, just put it there. Arbor replied with a weary expression and then closed the book with a flip of his hand. Light the lamp and eat. Yes, Crown Princess. Kai Xiu nodded. Just as she was about to leave, she was suddenly stopped by Arbor. No need. Prepare the carriage. I'm going back to the Qiao family. Kai Xiu was startled but did not say anything. She only nodded and went to prepare. When the evening lights were first lit, the little crown princess carriage arrived at the Qiao family's entrance. She jumped down from the carriage with a small floral cloth package in her hand. Kai Xiu and the rest could not help but twitch their eyes when they saw this. The moment the door opened, the aroma of food wafted out. Arbor's eyes lit up, and he ran to the dining room. Mother, I'm back to eat. Chapter 35:19. Wei Ziqin came out of the hall to welcome them. When she saw her daughter's figure skipping over, her eyes curved into crescents. Why did you run back? She said this, but her hands involuntarily hugged her daughter and took the small bag she was carrying. It's too boring to be alone in the Eastern Palace. I don't even have the energy to eat. Arbor shook her head and snuggled into her mother's arms. Jojo misses Mom. Her mother's embrace was still the warmest. There was no backstabbing and scheming at home, only the sincere smiles of the whole family. Unlike the Mu family, who tried to figure out her thoughts all day long. It was really laughable. However, they didn't know that Jojo's heart was actually very simple. She would be very sincere to whoever treated her well, and treat them even better. Wei Ziqin was so happy that she couldn't close her mouth. She reached out and tapped her forehead. You're already married, yet you're still acting spoiled all day long. Even if I'm married, I'm still Mom's daughter. Arbor looked up at her mother. Yes. Wei Ziqin smiled and pulled her into the dining hall. Second uncle and the others just happened to come in from the side door. They were all happy when they saw them. Jojo is back. How long do you plan to stay this time? Stay for 10 days to half a month, Xiaomu said. Kai Xiu, who was following behind, couldn't help but mutter, His Majesty is going to have a headache again. Her daughter-in-law kept running to her maternal home outside the palace. This was really worrying. Wei Ziqin smiled. Will His Majesty say anything if you keep running out? He's busy with a bunch of things. How can he have time to care about me? Sir Jojo snorted. Ren sure smiled and invited them to take a seat. Eldest sister-in-law, it's good that Jojo is back. She has nothing to do in the Eastern Palace. Arbor nodded vigorously. Eating dragon meat is boring when I'm eating alone. Wei Ziqin couldn't help but laugh. The family happily ate dinner together. Meanwhile, at the Mu family's side, Mu Jingfeng paced back and forth in the room a few times, constantly looking back at the door. Patriarch. Mu Liang's voice made Mu Jingfeng's face light up. Come in. Mu Jingfeng turned to look at Mu Liang with a joyful expression. What did the crown princess say? The crown princess didn't say anything. She only asked someone to accept the letter and sent me away. What? Mu Jingfeng's eyes instantly narrowed. Could it be that the punishment is too light and is still not to her liking? However, if she crippled Mu Rochuan's cultivation and broke her wrists, she would be a cripple in the future. She wouldn't even be able to draw talismans. How could this not be to her liking? Could it be that he had to give the order to kill Mu Rochuan? Mu Jingfeng's eyes glinted sharply. How's the investigation of the Shi family going? Master, there's a triple confinement, rebound, and binding talisman array above the Shi family. Most people can only see the confinement layer. Such a method, Mu Jingfeng's eyes revealed a trace of fanaticism. Have you found out if it was done by the crown princess? It should be done by the crown princess. Mu Liang nodded indifferently. After all, there aren't many people in the world who have such a special talisman crafting method. Mu Jingfeng couldn't help but clench his fists. This daughter must return to the Mu family. He definitely couldn't let such a genius wander outside. Although this daughter of his had always been at odds with him, no matter what, even if he had to resort to underhanded means, he had to make her return to the family. This matter still needed to be considered at length. Mu Jingfeng was currently somewhat regretful that he had fallen out with this daughter of his back then. If he had known earlier, he would have treated her better back then. Chapter 35-20. After eating and drinking to her heart's content, Lady Jojo carried her small floral bundle and returned to her pear blossom courtyard. Madame Ren asked Wei Ziqin with a puzzled expression, "Why is Jojo carrying a small bundle around all day? Isn't she a talisman master? She has both a storage space and an inner world. What is she doing running around with such a small bundle around all day?" What a joke! Wei Ziqin's mouth twitched. She coughed lightly and said, "Sister-in-law, there's something you don't know. This child likes to carry a bundle around wherever she goes. Whenever she goes out, she'll have to carry it around. This is probably one of her hobbies." Hobbies? Madame Ren nodded. Who doesn't have hobbies, right? Crown Princess, someone from the Night Pavilion has sent news about the Mu family. Would you like to take a look? Arbor nodded. She took the letter from Li Yi and glanced at it before tossing it back. Got it? You guys should rest early too. Seeing her indifferent expression, no one said anything else. They turned off the lights and retreated. Arbor lay on her bed, pulled the blanket over herself, and rolled around on the bed. A trace of mockery appeared on her lips. He had already been crippled and thrown to the Branch family. Old Madam still sent people to the Branch family to deliver this and that. Was this just a small token of her affection? A big family was a big family. In the face of benefits, kinship and whatnot were probably just illusory things. The next day, Arbor woke up early and walked out of her room in high spirits. She had just moved her small arms and legs when she saw Li Yi land in front of her with a whoosh. Crown Princess, the Shi family's grand elder, came out of seclusion yesterday. Then, did this grand elder manage to break the talisman formation that I set up? Her 3 layers of confinement, recoil, and binding talisman arrays weren't that easy to deal with. Li Yi shook her head. A trace of adoration for the little crown princess appeared on her carved little face. That grand elder only used 10% of his strength. After he was repelled, he didn't dare to make another move. They're currently trapped in the Shi family residence, trying to come up with a plan. This morning, they sent out a signal to the outside world, but it was blocked by a talisman array. But the Shi family's matter has already caught His Majesty's attention. I'm sure His Majesty will send someone to investigate this matter in the next 2 days. The little crown princess replied with an "oh," and did not say anything else. Li Yi asked curiously, when does the crown princess plan to deal with them? Let's wait for a few more days. Arbor blinked and walked towards the dining room with his hands behind his back. Sister. Jolin, who was walking towards her, cheered and ran up to her. Sister, you're up so early. Arbor nodded and looked her up and down. Little Lin, you swallowed the bloodshed vermilion fruit last time. The fruit pulp can help you improve your physique and train your cultivation. The core of the fruit will help you comprehend your spiritual roots. You should be able to comprehend one of the 5 spirits now. She looked her up and down a few more times before saying, I'll get Qiuqiu to give you a drop of natural water and see if you can comprehend the 9th level of spirit water. How about you go to Fish Orchid Planet for seclusion for a while? When Jolin heard this, she nodded her little head. Hey, big sister. She definitely wouldn't be a burden to her sister in the future. She would work hard to become stronger so that she could shoulder the burden of the Qiao family and protect her family. Arbor patted her little sister's head and pulled her into the dining room. Let father and mother know before you go into seclusion. Chapter 35-21. After all, it wasn't something that could be done in a short period of time. Once she went into seclusion, it could take a day or 2, or even 3 months. The sisters entered the living room just as breakfast was about to begin. Arbor brought up little Lin Er's matter to her parents. Since it was a serious matter of cultivation, Qiao Zhongbang and the others naturally supported it. Moreover, they had all visited Paradise Planet before. It was magical and powerful. Since their youngest daughter could cultivate there, they naturally didn't have to worry about her safety. Arbor's family happily finished their breakfast and planned to drink tea in the living room. However, the little monk raised his little head and asked in a childish voice, Benefactress, the weather is so good today. Can you take this little monk out for a walk? Arbor looked down at the little guy and coughed. She took out a pink square cloth hat from her inner world. All right then. Put this on. I'll take you out for a walk. The little monk immediately showed a look of disdain. That's for my benefactress. Xiao Mu's eyes turned, and she took the little monkey out of Paradise Planet. She patted the little fellow's head. Little monkey, the fur on your face is much better now. Are you interested in going out for a walk with us? The little monkey was originally covered in hair from head to toe. Now, at least the outline of his face was slightly clearer. After a lot of hair was gone, his little face revealed its original delicate appearance. Sister, I want to go too. I want to go too. Qiao Sin cheerfully cheered and ran to Arbor to show off. All right then. Arbor thought about it and agreed. She put the little pink hat on the little monk's head. Let's go together. Jolin immediately wanted to join in the fun. Arbor thought about it again. If she didn't let the little foodie go out for a walk, she probably wouldn't feel at ease even if she went into seclusion. Rather than that, she might as well go out for a walk. Moreover, she was curious about how the Shi family was doing. The Qiao family's residence was located on Changle Street. They didn't need to call a cab when they went out. They could just walk around. After Qiao Mu and the others exited, they strolled along Changle Avenue. When they saw some odds and ends, they happily bought them all. Sister, the imperial capital of the divine prefecture sure is lively. Holding a pastry in each hand, Qiao Sin muttered softly as he ate, in our Mo Kingdom capital, we can only see so many people walking on the streets during the holidays. Arbor raised his hand and patted his younger brother's head. This child's birth coincided with troubled times, and she had been living on Sikong Planet all this time. Even though the Mo Kingdom capital's public security was still okay, she would still be harassed by zombies. Naturally, she had never seen such a peaceful and prosperous world. Xiao Sin, do you like it here? Qiao Sin nodded vigorously. Then you have to work hard and become stronger. Only then will you be able to protect your beloved home. Miss Qiao kept reminding her younger brother to work hard. Qiao Sin nodded obediently. Sister, don't worry. I will work hard. Everyone, go and take a look. The Shi family has sent out a distress signal to the outside world again. Wow, they've already sent out their grand elders. How come they still haven't been able to break that talisman formation? This is getting interesting. Ha! Some people were teasing, while others were watching the show. Many people rushed in the direction of the Sher family again in a hubbub. Xiao Lin nibbled on the drumstick in her hand curiously. She turned to look at Arbor and asked, "Sister, what's going on with the Sher family?" Chapter 35-22. Arbor's eyes flickered. Little Lin, are you curious? Xiao Lin naturally nodded her little head vigorously. Of course she was curious. She heard that the Sher family was one of the 6 great patrician families of the Divine Province, a large family clan with abundant resources. Now that they were trapped by a talisman array, how could she not be curious? Moreover, talisman arrays? Xiao Lin glanced at her older sister strangely, but she was unable to discern any emotion from the little stoic's face. Heh, it couldn't be that this matter had something to do with her older sister, right? Arbor said expressionlessly, since little Lin is interested, then let's go over and join in the fun. Xiao Lin blinked and hastily nodded her little head. Strange, she kept feeling that her older sister's calm stoic face hid a sharp and cold glint. Arbor led Xiao Lin, Xiao Sin, the little monk, and the little monkey toward the Sher family along with the crowd with an apathetic expression. It looked like the 5 of them were just following the crowd to the Sher family's entrance to join in the fun. Li Yi and Saixio, who were a short distance away from them, exchanged glances and hastily quickened their pace to catch up. When they arrived at the Sher family's entrance, they finally understood what it meant to be a sea of people that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. There were about several thousand people crowding around the Sher family's entrance at this time. There were even people who specially climbed up trees and sat on tree trunks with tea sets and small tables, leisurely sipping tea while watching the Sher family make a fool of themselves. Too hilarious. Little Xiao Lin's mouth twitched. She looked around and saw many spies sent by various clans to gather information hidden in the crowd. Arbor and the others relied on their nimble movements and Li Yi to open a path for them to squeeze to the front of the crowd. An auntie who was talking until her saliva was flying everywhere said to someone with a smile, "Oh my, there are twice as many people here today compared to yesterday. There are people selling seats at the back. If I want to sell my front row seat, I should be able to sell it for 5 spirit coins." Xiao Lin glanced at that auntie speechlessly. That auntie also immediately noticed them. Her pair of watery eyes widened as she said, "Hey, where did you little fellows come from? It's so crowded at the back?" If he wasn't an immortal cultivator, he wouldn't have been able to squeeze his way to the front of the crowd. Could it be that these weak-looking brats all had extraordinary skills? The aunt looked at them suspiciously. Before she could speak again, a person strode over from the side and cupped his fists at Xiao Mu with an excited expression. "Little miss, I've finally found you." Arbor tilted his head and saw a young lady with bright eyes, white teeth, and smiling eyes. It seemed a little familiar, but Arbor couldn't remember where he had seen it. "Benefactor, don't you remember me?" The girl laughed heartily. "I'm Hao Fei. A few days ago, my benefactor lent a helping hand and saved my life. He even helped me successfully pass through the 5 spirits reincarnation tribulation and successfully advanced." When Arbor heard about the 5 spirits reincarnation tribulation, he immediately came back to his senses. He nodded and looked at her curiously. "You are the female cultivator who was burned and forged by the Thunderfire tribulation that day?" Hao Fei's eyes flashed with joy. She nodded heavily and said, "Yes. I will never forget the grace of rebirth. Please accept a bow from Hao Fei." The auntie at the side instantly fell silent. Chapter 35-23. She was aware of Hao Fei's identity. When this fairy descended from the sky that day, many male cultivators were deferential to her, so it could be seen that she was a very formidable person. But now, this fairy was actually so respectful to this stoic-faced little lady. It could be seen that this little lady was definitely out of the ordinary. Arbor shook his head. "You don't need to be like this. A favor must be repaid with a gushing spring." Hao Fei bowed and stood up with a smile. From now on, Hao Fei is willing to follow Little Benefactor and repay the favor of that day. Arbor blinked. That day, I merely lifted a finger. You don't need to be like this. Hao Fei straightened her face and shook her head. To Benefactor, lending a divine object like the giant cauldron that day was a trivial matter, but to Hao Fei, that was indeed an act that saved my life. Little Benefactor, please don't decline. Hao Fei bowed respectfully again. During this time, I've been searching for traces of Benefactor in the city, but I couldn't find you. I didn't expect that I would run into Benefactor by chance today. Arbor's eyes brightened. You're truly willing to work for me? I won't refuse even if I have to sacrifice my life. Hao Fei hastily said, if Benefactor has any doubts, Hao Fei is willing to hand over a strand of her soul. Sister Hao. The female cultivators behind her couldn't resist exclaiming. Hao Fei waved her hand indifferently. Her life was saved by the young woman, and if it wasn't for the young woman's help that day, then not to mention advancing into the god-rank realm, her soul would have probably been obliterated a long time ago, and even a wisp of ash would have dispersed into the heavens and the earth. Thus, it was merely a strand of her soul, so what was there to mention? If she didn't repay the little lady's favor, she would definitely be conflicted and unable to endure it. If an inner demon developed, it would probably affect her future cultivation. The little stoic cracked her small lips. I don't need a soul. Since that's the case, then consider it as me hiring you. Hao Fei was overjoyed and hastily cupped her hands with a smile. It's already great that Little Benefactor is willing to keep me. As for hiring me, there's no need to mention it again. I, Hao Fei, also don't need Benefactor to give me any more rewards. At this time, the 4 female cultivators behind her quickly stepped forward and cupped their hands. Little girl, we've been traveling Jianghu with Sister Hao for many years, and we've become inseparable. Do you think you can? An awkward expression appeared on the female cultivator's face as she spoke. This was quite a bit of an attempt to force a sale. After all, they were only level 12 great spiritual masters. They were not God Realm masters. If someone could take out a treasure to help Sister Hao successfully advance to God Realm, he must have extraordinary strength. There was no need to reluctantly take them in. However, they didn't want to be separated from Sister Hao. After so many years of traveling together, they had already become like family to each other. They really didn't want to be separated like this. Arbor glanced at their troubled faces and nodded. Then I'll hire the 4 of you at the same time. I'll give you a monthly salary according to the market price. The 4 of them immediately beamed with joy and thanked the little girl. The little stoic thought, finally, the Heavenly Pill Dispensary and Heavenly Province Association in the south of the city had hired thugs to protect them. In the future, when her small business expanded, perhaps there would be greedy people coming to make trouble. At that time, with Hao Fei and the others watching over them, she could be at ease. Ao Yi, who was hiding in the shadows, was already silently crying. This was the difference. Chapter 35-24. It was obvious how much the little girl disliked the crown prince when he offered himself to her. Look at the female cultivators that the little girl offered to take in now. How good was their treatment? Unlike her and Xiao Yao, who offered themselves to the crown prince but no one wanted them. They even had to pay a fee to stay and serve the crown prince. Jealousy was heart-wrenching. Tong, who was also hiding in the dark, couldn't help but glance at the kid beside him. He elbowed him and asked, "What are you doing?" He suddenly looked like he had nothing to live for. It didn't seem like anything had happened. Arbor was in an inexplicably good mood after taking in a few useful subordinates. He didn't think that he would be able to pick up a few more subordinates just by inspecting the Sher clan. Master Jojo's luck was on his side. It was unstoppable. Jolin was also very happy. Nibbling on the chicken leg in his hand, he asked, "Sister, do you think the Sher clan will be able to escape from this array?" It's coming, it's coming." A commotion broke out. Everyone looked up at the sky above the Sher clan. They saw an old man with white hair and beard leaping into the air. Abruptly, he launched several palm strikes at the sky above the Sher clan's courtyard. Everyone heard a deafening boom, but the array didn't shake in the slightest. Then, under the lead of the white-haired old man, dozens of elders of the Shur clan launched dozens of attacks in the direction of the old man's palm strikes. Everyone's eyes lit up. They said excitedly, "It seems that the Shur clan has finally figured out a way to deal with this array after a night of silence." They're launching fierce attacks at the same point on the array's barrier. If this continues, the array will definitely break. A group of onlookers were watching the show with relish, and there were also some idle people there who were explaining a thing or two. Such a big commotion naturally attracted more and more people to gather at the Shur clan's entrance. Arbor's lips curled into a faint sneer. After watching for a while, he said to the kids, "There's nothing to see. Let's go home and eat." Jolin and the others had been watching the show at the Shur clan's entrance for a long time. They were basically full of fruits and snacks. Hearing their sister's words, they squeezed out of the crowd and followed Arbor back to the Chiao residence on Changle Street. "Sister, when are you going to deal with them?" Jolin asked curiously. "How did the Shur family offend you?" "They are the employers behind the group of people who went to the Lower Star region to commit violence." "What?" Xiao Lin and Xiao Sun both exclaimed. Jolin took a bite of the apple and said, "Sister, you have to teach them a lesson." Arbor smirked. "We'll talk about it in 3 days." Hao Fei's group of 5 finally understood. So the large talisman array in front of the Shur family's door was set up by their little master? "Let's go. I'll take you guys to the Southern Sky Manor," Arbor said to Hao Fei and the others. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Early in the morning, Arbor found Stay Up Late and a few others to lead the way. He led a group of purple forest guards straight to the Shur family's doorstep. The pork that had been simmered for 3 days was ready for oil extraction. Arbor gestured with her eyes. Immediately, a purple forest guard stepped forward and brought a chair for her. Little Crown Princess sat down boldly. She took the list of compensation that Li Yi handed her and gave it a shake. The list of compensation fell to the ground. "Let's shout," Little Crown Princess said. "Everyone inside, listen up." Chapter 35-25. The corner of Ao Ye's mouth twitched. He cleared his throat and immediately shouted, "The Shur family members inside, listen up. You're currently trapped in a triple confinement and rebound talisman matrix. If you want to leave, you must agree to our 18 conditions." Everyone was speechless as they looked at Stay Up Late, who was shouting. Stay Up Late couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth when he saw everyone looking at him. His voice was trembling with laughter. "Cough, 18 conditions. None of them can be missing. If you agree, just shout. If you don't, you can continue wasting your time in that talisman matrix." The white-haired Grand Elder led dozens of Shur family elders and naturally heard Ao Ye's shout. He spat angrily, "Ignorant brat, who are you? Why don't you go all out and fight with us? Be serious." Arbor's face was stoic as he turned to look at Ao Ye, who was about to speak. Ao Ye coughed and hastily suppressed the laughter in his heart. He put on a serious face and continued shouting in a serious tone, "The Shur family members inside, listen up. We have 18 conditions. If you agree, shout good. Good my ass. I won't agree to even one condition, let alone 18. Do you think you can trap us Shur family members with a lousy talisman matrix? Dream on. This talisman matrix will one day run out of talisman energy and self-destruct. Just you wait, you little bastard." One of the Shur family elders shouted angrily. The little stoic said expressionlessly, "This person's words are unbearably vulgar. Use the 5-blow thunderclap to wash his mouth." Then she flicked her fingers and dozens of jade talismans flew up like streaks of light, directly entering the center of the triple talisman matrix. Not long after, a person's blood-curdling wail and howl could be heard from inside, accompanied by thunderous booms. The spectators outside all jumped in fright. The confinement talisman matrix had trapped the Shur family members inside for 3 to 4 days, but it had never attacked anyone before. Wow, as soon as this little stoic came here, she immediately set up an attack talisman matrix and started attacking the several elders in the matrix in a matter of minutes. Stay up late flashed a warm smile and shouted at the Sure family members inside. The Sure family members inside, listen up. Yell if you agree to the 18 conditions. If you don't agree, then you can continue to endure. Even the Daluo immortals can't save your clan. The little girl sat on the stool expressionlessly and took out a plate of cut fruits from Paradise Planet. While she ate them absent-mindedly, she threw out one set of rune arrays after another. Stay Up Late was sweating like a waterfall as he looked at his little crown princess. He felt that the little crown princess's gloomy face was a little scary. If she was willing to speak, it meant that at least the situation had not developed into a very bad one. Once the little fellow did not even have the mood to talk, that meant that she wanted to destroy the Sure family. Dragging it out won't do you much good. Stay Up Late continued to persuade them earnestly. Don't think that our little master's talisman matrix will run out of talisman energy one day. You have no idea how many similar talisman matrices our little master has. 3 days won't exhaust your food and water, but what about 5, 7, or 15 days? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.